starting the spoilers from the original Spider-Man. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176. A wily old fellow. Shameless. He will do anything to achieve his goal. Such a man should be sent to jail. Strongly demand the arrest of this old fellow. After the exposure of McCann's frame-up, the citizens were outraged and felt sorry for Harry, who was framed by this old fellow. While walking in the tunnel, Parker could hear the shouts of many people in the square above. Fortunately, George immediately took out a loudspeaker to explain to everyone that McCann had been taken away for investigation. At the same time, major media were also reporting these things. The mayor of New York immediately decided to hold a press conference to explain to people from all walks of life that they had taken action and gained something. Tony looked at McCann's face with disgust, and he thought of Abadiastani. That old fellow also wanted to replace him to take charge of Stark Industries. At that time, Abadia almost buried him in the soil. If it weren't for the good luck that the little robot Benben handed him the old reactor, he might really die, so he was very annoyed to see McCann succeed. Parker came to the underground of Pershing Park. He could hear two staff members behind him patrolling the subway line and chatting as they walked. Parker crawled through the subway station covered by debris and half-flowered roller shutters and climbed onto the platform. This place had been abandoned for a long time. He looked around and saw a different wall, so he walked over, took out a coin, put it into the coin slot, and the railing turned. He looked at the wall in front of him, but there was no movement at all. He thought it was just a wishful thinking of his, so he pushed the wall and still felt unsatisfied, so he kicked and hit it again. I don't know if it was because the mechanism reacted too slowly or he touched the switch a few times, but there was a movement behind him. Parker turned his head and saw a crack in the middle of the subway track. Then it slowly opened to both sides, and a train car slowly rose from the bottom with the symbol 6688 on it. The lights in the car lit up, the door opened automatically, and the computer inside finally restarted after many years, and immediately sent Richard Parker to the loading complete. Parker slowly walked into the car and saw a dazzling array of experimental instruments and other things inside. He came to the computer, looked at the prompt displayed on it, and sat down. Then he opened the file and saw Richard Parker's video emerged. My name is Richard Parker. No matter what the rumors say about me, I hope everyone can know the truth. Austin Industries is a global leader in genetic research. But Norman Osborn reached an agreement with foreign military organizations, and they funded my research. Later I found out that the purpose of their funding was to manufacture weapons, biological weapons. So I refused. So now, in order to get rid of me, Norman Osborn forged evidence against me. He wants to take my research results for himself. But there is one very important thing that Norman doesn't know. The DNA I implanted in the spider is my own. This means that without me and my bloodline, the Austin group cannot replicate or continue. I have tried my best to destroy the relevant files, but I have a responsibility to protect the world. Sorry. Richard hurriedly closed the computer. After watching the video, Parker was full of tears in his eyes, and he knew that his father would not be a traitor. Father. Harry. It's gone. He silently poured himself a glass of wine. He knew Norman only wanted to cure himself. He could do anything for this. He had no reason to blame him, because Norman was also doing it for him. But he didn't expect that spiders could only be used by Richard Parker and his descendants. No wonder their experiments could never succeed. It turned out that the fundamental factor was here. Parker and Gwen also finished watching Richard Parker's book at almost the same time point watching the video left by Kay. Parker's eyes were red like the one in the sky, and Gwen hugged him distressedly. Peter, are you okay? Hearing Gwen's worried voice, Parker took a deep breath to calm down and nodded slightly. Let's see if there is any important information. When the two were searching for other useful things in the carriage, the outside world was already in an uproar, and countless people were talking about it. Those who thought that Peter Parker's parents were traitors were slapped in the face. Uncle Ben and Aunt May were also very shocked. Although they had some doubts in their hearts, they could only believe what the government said without evidence. Now the truth is finally revealed, so they want to ask for an explanation. There are countless Spider-Man fans who share the same idea with them. Harry is still immersed in the mood that Norman framed Richard. For a while, he didn't think about this matter until Felicia reminded him, and he immediately asked people to delete those bad descriptions about Richard Parker. At the same time, the FBI came to Ben Parker's house after their death to tell him that Richard and his wife were traitors, which also caused dissatisfaction among fans. The FBI director was blocked by fans again after the murder of Richard Ritter. The mayor of New York had no choice but to ask the investigation team that was investigating Ravencroft Mental Hospital to investigate whether Norman Osborn was in collusion with foreign military organizations. For a time, the entire Osborn Industries was in turmoil, and the stock price fell again and again. If Norman had not died, and the current CEO Harry was Peter Parker's good brother, and the two had a very close relationship, it is estimated that all employees would have resigned. The 1.5th generation Spider-Man published a newspaper with pride and severely criticized those who had previously slandered Toby Spider's parents as traitors. He had confronted those who speculated and discredited Spider-Man more than once before, but there was no decisive evidence. Although the CIA announced that Toby Spider's parents were undercover, it was not widely circulated. Many people pretended to be deaf and dumb, and pretended not to see the smear campaign against Spider-Man. Now the Sky Curtain directly told everyone that Richard Parker was wrongly accused. Now they could no longer pretend not to know. For a time, the debate about whether Spider-Man's parents were traitors died down. Chapter 177. Outside the Ravencroft Mental Hospital, Harry drove here. He wanted to release Maximum before Macken spread the news that he was kicked out of Osborn Industries. As usual, the guard stopped the car. "Can I help you?" Harry lowered the window, looked at the guard and said, "Yeah. You can open the door for me. I'm Harry Osborn. I'm going to see a patient in the quarantine area." The guard saw that it was Harry Osborn, and he didn't dare to neglect him. He immediately led him to find another security guard. "Joe, this is Mr. Osborn of the Osborn Group." Joe took a look at Harry and said, "Sorry, I can't let you in without a yellow ID." Just as he was talking, Harry suddenly pulled out the electric shocker from his waist and knocked him down. Seeing this, another guard immediately wanted to take out his weapon to subdue Harry. But Harry took the lead and pressed his hand and put the electric shocker on him again, and he was immediately stunned. Harry snatched the yellow badges from them. Inside the mental hospital, Dr. Kafka was walking and instructing the staff behind him. Continue to inject 400 milligrams of sodium thiopental and phenobarbital into the electric man. Harry had already changed into a white coat and passed by them. Hearing this, he took off his mask and looked at Dr. Kafka, who was leaving. He walked in the direction he came from and pressed the emergency alarm button. The sudden alarm made the staff in the mental hospital panic. They began to leave their posts one after another. The security guard in charge of watching Maximum also left. Is their security measures so poor? Someone just sneaked in casually? Fuckman frowned at Harry's actions. It's okay that the guard was easily knocked down, but no one noticed it. If it was so easy for me to sneak in every time. Natasha complained. She also hoped to enter those important places as easily as Harry and Peter Parker. Hill and Barton also smiled when they heard this. As an agent, Natasha often needs to sneak in, but there is basically no such easy situation. Tony was also very speechless, but he had asked Pepper to strengthen the security measures before, so he didn't emphasize this to her again. Harry sighed, looking at the self in the sky who hated Spider-Man so much and felt ashamed of his paranoia. Parker clearly said that he needed more time to confirm. He wishfully believed that his blood would definitely save him, but the result was that if he used Parker's blood, he would most likely become a monster, and a small probability would directly die, but there was no possibility of recovery. In order to cure him, Parker made a deal with the Sky, but in the Sky he was determined to catch Spider-Man and wanted to forcibly obtain his blood. Although he didn't know Spider-Man's true identity, it was also a fact that he refused to listen to Spider-Man's advice. Carnage has simulated many times, but none of them succeeded. So far, the best result is to die quickly directly, and other situations are very painful. Harry was also sure that Richard Parker was right. Only he and his descendants could use it. Even if the bloodline was not pure enough, it might not be used. Harry took off his white coat and came to Maximum. After looking at the computer, he stopped the input of the sedative. "Hey." Harry called him softly. Maximum slowly opened his eyes. Harry looked at him and said, "I can get you out. Do you understand? But we have limited time." Harry turned his head to see if anyone was coming. "Who are you?" Maximum looked at Harry and asked. "I'm Harry Osborn. I want to make a deal with you." Harry stated his purpose. And Maximum said lightly after hearing this, "I should kill you." "Oh. Come on. Be ambitious." "Maximum. You don't want me. You want to kill Spider-Man." Harry complained. Maximum got excited when he heard Spider-Man's name. Harry knew he guessed right, and then persuaded Maximum. "I can help you catch him. But I need you to do me a favor first. I need you to help me get into Osborn Tower." Harry looked at Maximum and said word by word, "Help you get in? That's your company." Maximum was a little surprised. Harry Osborn couldn't get into Osborn Industries? Harry laughed at himself. "Haha. It's not the same anymore. Osborn Group betrayed you and me. So I can't get in without you, and you can't get out without me." Just as Harry was talking to Maximum, Kafka came over and asked, "What's going on?" The security guard quickly replied, "Someone triggered the alarm in the quarantine area." Kafka had a bad feeling when he saw Harry and immediately ordered, "Send the guards up immediately." Harry didn't know that Kafka had called the guards, and he was still talking to Maximum. Maximum said lightly, "You don't know what I want. You submitted the design plan for the power grid, but they stole it. You want it back. You just want to take back what belongs to you." Harry immediately told him what he knew. "How?" Maximum asked. "That's the power of the whole city. Maximum, and you can reach it." Harry tempted him with the power of all New York. "If you shut down the power grid, Spider-Man will come to you, and you can make him pay." In addition to electricity, Harry also tempted him with Spider-Man. At this time, the guards rushed out of the door quickly. "Smash it. Smash it." They smashed the glass of the window, and Harry heard the sound. He urged nervously, "Maximum, we don't have time. Tell me why I believe you." Maximum didn't believe Harry. "Because I need you," Harry said urgently. "You need me?" Harry's words caught Maximum's attention. He has always been a little transparent, just wanting to be noticed and needed by others. "Yes, I need you. You are my only hope to survive." "You need me?" Maximum asked again. Seeing the guard coming down the stairs, Harry became more anxious. "Yes, I need you. I need you. Please. Please." In a hurry, he rushed up and shocked Maximum with the electric shock device. The guards rushed over and held Harry down, and he yelled, "Please. I know how it feels to be abandoned. Please. Maximum. I need you. I need you." Chapter 178. Listening to Harry's cry, Maximum roared, and the whole person turned into electricity and disappeared on the spot. A security guard hit Harry with a bit of a gun and knocked him to the ground. The next second, a flash of lightning flashed across everyone, and the guards and Dr. Kafka fell to the ground at the same time. Harry propped himself up and looked up at the sky. Maximum slowly condensed and formed in the air in front of him. He was glowing with blue and white light, and there was a red light flashing inside. He fell in front of Harry and observed his body. This was also the first time he was dispersed into electricity. Harry looked at Maximum and smiled. Dr. Kafka saw that Maximum had been freed from the restraints, stood up and turned around to escape. Maximum still remembered the hatred of him torturing him before. Immediately stretched out his hand and emitted electricity. The powerful electromagnetic force stirred Dr. Kafka's body, causing him to scream in pain. Maximum lifted him up slowly into the air, and then locked him in the device, where he had been imprisoned before. Kafka was electrocuted by the strong current, and could not take care of himself. He could only scream no, in pain. The machine slowly fell, and submerged him in the water, just like he did to Maximum. Maximum ignored his screams, and looked at Harry. "Do you want to be friends with me? I think we are already friends." Harry smiled and walked forward, trying to pat his shoulder, but was electrocuted. He instantly retracted his hand. I once had a friend. But it didn't last long. Maximum was talking about Spider-Man. Jealousy made him split apart. He was jealous that Spider-Man was the center of attention, while he became a monster in people's mouths. Yeah, me too. Harry also hated Spider-Man, hated that he refused to donate blood to him, and wanted to watch him die. Let's go catch that little spider. Maximum didn't want to wait a moment. The sooner he killed Spider-Man, the sooner he would be noticed, and then he would become the overlord of the world. Let everyone live under his shadow. This is what I fear the most, Tony said, covering his forehead. He was afraid that Maximum could be partially electrified, and maybe his whole body could be electrified, so it would be difficult to trap him. Unexpectedly, what he feared would come true. If Tony met him wearing the Mark armor, he would directly electrify and enter the armor. He didn't need to do anything else. He would just absorb all the energy and Tony would be GG. Banner also frowned. He was not as afraid of the Electro as Tony. He was not afraid of anything except magic when he turned into the Hulk, but he couldn't hit Maximum either. Tony silently thought about how he would deal with the Electro if he came to them. It seemed that it was not easy to deal with him, except to lead him to an area with no electricity around. Of course, there is another way, which is to use super large energy infusion to directly suffocate him to death. Tony does not believe that Maximum can absorb energy without limit. As long as the energy transmitted at one time is large enough, he may be killed before he can vent it out. It's just that how much electricity is needed, this still needs to be studied. I wonder if the large reactor in Stark Industries is enough. Tony thought secretly in his heart. Egghead was also thinking about this problem. He was even a little curious if Natasha could kill Maximum with Thor's hammer, or could she only charge him? Maximum was ashamed when he looked at himself in the sky who wanted to kill Spider-Man. In reality, he did not have superpowers and did not become so arrogant. He still liked Spider-Man very much, and Peter Parker had agreed to attend his birthday party. As a result, he wanted to kill Parker directly in the sky, and for a while he felt that he had no face to see Parker. At the same time, many people began to criticize him. They thought that Maximum had become ruthless after he had superpowers. Spider-Man clearly wanted to help him, but he hated him because Spider-Man was more popular. Many people on the internet abused and ridiculed him. It was not Spider-Man's intention for the sniper to shoot in the square, but Maximum blamed all the responsibility on Spider-Man and seemed to have a deep hatred for him and was determined to kill Parker. Because of the things in the sky, Maximum was subjected to a lot of online violence and human flesh searches in reality. Many people blocked the door of OS Industries and chased him to scold him. But Maximum endured it silently. When Parker learned about this from Harry, it was the second day after Maximum was scolded. He and Gwen cooperated with the police to move the things left by Richard Parker out of the ground. After learning about the incident, Parker was a little helpless, but he still came to help Maximum to plead for mercy. He hugged Mike in front of countless people. Maximum declared that they would be good friends and called on his fans to stop insulting Maximum. Maximum was so moved that he burst into tears. For the first time, he realized how kind Peter Parker was. He wanted to kill him so much in the dark, but Parker still came to help him regardless of the past. Parker walked out of the dark tunnel. After leaving the underground, his mobile phone had a signal and he immediately received a voice message. "Hi, Peter. It's me. I was accepted by Oxford University. Wow. So excited. I went to your house a few days ago, but you were not at home. Now I'm on my way to the airport because I found some summer courses and I think this will make it easier for me to study. I think it's time to let go." Listening to Gwen's message, Parker's steps slowly stopped. There was a desire deep in his heart. Listening to Gwen's farewell, Parker strengthened his heart. Under the bridge, Gwen was stuck in a taxi. She looked up at the window. She might not see these buildings for many years, but this doesn't mean I don't love you anymore. On the contrary, because I love you. So, okay, goodbye. Parker, who had just helped Maximum out of trouble, came to Gwen's house. Not long after he entered the house, he saw Gwen was about to go to the UK on the sky screen. "Sister, will you go to the UK?" Hogwarts Stacy asked Gwen. No, because I'm going to Columbia University. A few days later, Gwen finally received a notification letter from the university, which was sent by almost all the famous universities in the world. Gwen didn't expect that there would be so many top universities competing for her, and all of them offered a lot of benefits. In addition to free tuition, there are also high scholarships. However, after hesitating for a long time, Gwen decided to stay in New York. After all, Columbia University is not bad. It is one of the Ivy League schools, and has an outstanding academic reputation in many fields. If she could, she didn't want to leave her family, not to mention that if she left, Parker would definitely go with her. Parker told her this many times. Chapter 179. In Osborne Industries, the security personnel were just fishing as usual, but suddenly all the surveillance in front of them turned into a distorted screen. The security director immediately stood up and realized that something was wrong. "We have to leave quickly." He hurriedly found McCann and urged him to leave Osborne building. "Why? What's wrong?" McCann looked at him in confusion. The next second, a flash of lightning appeared on the chest of the security director who was walking towards him. McCann was startled. He saw a hole in his chest where his heart was pierced by the lightning, and then he slowly fell forward. A figure appeared behind him. It was Maximum, who turned into electricity. Seeing this, McCann immediately stood up from the chair and looked at him in disbelief. At this time, Maximum had changed into a new set of clothes and tilted his head to look at McCann. "Remember me?" As he said that, Maximum flicked his fingers lightly at the table and chair beside him, and a flash of lightning directly smashed the table, where McCann had just sat, into pieces. McCann showed a look of horror on his face. He looked at the table, that had become a pile of broken copper and iron, then looked at Maximum, and then saw Harry, who walked in behind him. "Oh my God, things have changed. I know you are embarrassed to admit it, but how beautiful is our counterattack. Am I right?" Harry looked at McCann with a smile on his face, walked to Maximum and asked him. "Just right." Maximum agreed with Harry's statement. "Okay, so, Virgin Mary, it's time to make a wish. I'm going to enter the special." Harry snapped his fingers and looked at McCann triumphantly and was about to tell him his purpose. Unexpectedly, McCann interrupted him and asked, "How dare you come back here? You stubborn, good-for-nothing freak." Harry smiled, indifferent to McCann's incompetent rage. Maximum stretched out a finger, shot a lightning bolt at McCann, and McCann immediately fell to the ground. "Oh, God, sorry, that's not the answer we want to hear." Harry smiled faintly, then whistled while walking to the security director, who was unwilling to close his eyes, and took his pistol. Maximum came to McCann's side, rubbed his palms to generate electricity, and then put his fingers on his chest and tapped it. McCann, who had already stopped the heart, was immediately stimulated to come back to life. "Okay, welcome back to overtime." Harry pointed the gun at McCann's chin. "Hey, let's go for a walk." Then he grabbed McCann and stood up, asking him to lead the way. "The power grid is yours." Harry turned his head and said to Maximum with a smile. Maximum glanced at the ground plug on the ground, and the electromagnetic force opened the plug cover. Then Maximum turned into an electric current and entered it, and then he politely extended an electric current to cover the ground plug cover. He is quite polite. Toby Spider looked at Maximum's actions, especially the last action of closing the cover, and couldn't help but say something. "Well, from the surface, you can't tell that he wants to kill you." The first generation Gwen nodded repeatedly beside him. "Hey, that's not me." Toby Spider turned his head and looked at her speechlessly. The first generation Gwen always compared Toby Spider and Garfield Spider together, and then put what Garfield Spider did on Toby Spider. But he is also Peter Parker. The first generation Gwen looked at Toby Spider with a smile. He couldn't say a word to Toby Spider, so he could only grit his teeth and mutter that if he met him in the future, he would definitely teach him a lesson. Garfield Spider had caused him so much trouble. First, he wanted to eat flies, then he messed up other people's important laboratories, and then he liked to tell lies. The first generation Gwen had laughed at him for this countless times, but he couldn't get angry with her. The first generation Uncle Ben also told him not to learn from Garfield Spider. He couldn't find anyone to vent his anger on, so he kept all his anger in his heart. "McCann, you old man, you have come to this day." Harry looked at the security director who was killed in the sky and McCann who was held hostage by him, and felt very relieved. It is worth mentioning that Harry had submitted all the things McCann had hidden, and found many people hidden in them. The security director was also taken away, as well as Kafka, although he had been taken away a long time ago. What awaits them will be the trial of the law. The only benefit for them may be that they will not die, especially the security director, who will die with his eyes open. Harry pointed a gun at McCann from behind, threatening him to lead the way to the location of the special project. The two walked into the elevator, and McCann entered a string of keys on the elevator computer. Then the two took the elevator to their destination. Harry pushed McCann forward and shouted, "Give me the spider venom." As the closed compartment opened, Harry looked at the things around him and muttered to himself, "What are these?" When McCann heard him, he replied, "It's the future." They passed by one or two rooms with the military armor mentioned before, and Dr. Octopus's mechanical tentacles. McCann came to the room where the spider venom was stored and opened the door. The box in front of him contained the spider venom that Harry wanted. Seeing what he wanted right in front of him, Harry couldn't help laughing. He pointed a gun at McCann and said, "Take out a bottle." McCann wanted to say something, but when he looked at the gun pointing at his chest, he could only reach out for the venom and the syringe. "It won't work. Except for human trials. We did all the diagnostic tests," he said while filling the medicine bottle. Harry disagreed. "You have already conducted human experiments. It's just that you are too stupid. You just don't know it." McCann put the poison in the bottle into the syringe. "Inject now." Harry's hand holding the gun kept shaking, and McCann could only obediently inject the poison from his arm into Harry's body. Harry just smiled, and he found that his arm stopped shaking. "It's always in your hand." He looked at McCann and smiled. Then Harry found something wrong, and saw the black and green blood vessels on his neck popping out one after another, and the next second Harry knelt on the ground in pain. He struggled in pain, and threw the pistol aside. McCann took the opportunity to run towards the elevator and blocked it. Harry took off his clothes. He was lying on the ground, with veins popping up all over his body, and two bulges on his back rolling constantly. He screamed in great pain. His whole body was covered with sweat, and he looked extremely hideous and terrifying. Chapter 180. Harry. Parker looked at Harry who was struggling in pain and horror. He didn't expect Harry to be so crazy that he injected spider venom without even doing any experiments. Fortunately he didn't do that. "I was scared just looking at it." Gwen looked at Harry's face twisted by pain and felt a little palpitated. Harry swallowed his saliva and was very glad that Parker got him the medicine to cure his illness. Otherwise he might have ended up like this. This Harry is a little too crazy. Toby Spider and the first generation Gwen looked at each other. They didn't expect Harry to be so desperate and put all his hopes on spider venom. The first generation Harry covered his forehead, and Mary Jane said with a lucky look, "Fortunately you got the physical enhancer from your father, otherwise you might be like this." "No. My father told me that there has never been such a genetic disease in our family." The first generation Harry shook his head. He had already asked Norman about this. The first generation Harry didn't understand why this was so, and could only attribute it to the fact that the parallel universes were not exactly the same. Tony looked at Harry's painful appearance, turned his head and asked Banner, "What will happen to him?" "He will die. Do you see those blue blood vessels on his body? That is proof that the toxins are flowing all over his body. Unless he has advanced medical equipment that can quickly purify the toxins in his blood vessels, he will definitely not survive." Banner thought for a few seconds and gave the answer. Tony said with some regret, "Alas, the first generation of Harry died. Will the second generation of Harry die too? I thought he could survive." Banner spread his hands. He didn't know whether Harry could survive. After all, Cheyenne Moo secretly hid a video. Gwen was sitting in a taxi. The driver looked outside and suddenly shouted, "It's Spider-Man." Gwen followed his gaze and smiled happily. "Stop," Gwen said to the driver subconsciously, forgetting that they had been stuck in traffic for a long time. "Miss, I didn't move at all." The driver turned his head and complained to her. Gwen opened the car door, and the people on the riverbank came to the shore and looked into the distance. They saw Peter Parker wrote a big "I love you" on the bridge with spider silk. Gwen looked at Parker's confession and couldn't stop laughing. Then tears appeared in her eyes. Just as she was looking at the words on the bridge, Parker swung the spider silk and carried her away. The two greeted each other at the top of the bridge. Parker hugged Gwen and asked, "Did you see my message?" "What message?" Gwen didn't read the message. After Parker reminded her, she realized that the message was sent by Parker. "I didn't recognize it." She smiled while hugging Parker. "Then I'll read it to you. It says, 'I love you because I love you.' So you're wrong." Parker looked at Gwen affectionately. "What did I do wrong?" Gwen looked at Parker curiously. "You said we were drifting apart." "You're wrong. We weren't drifting apart. I've always followed you. And I'll always follow you." Parker said his thoughts while leaning against Gwen's forehead. "I know there are 1,000 reasons we shouldn't be together. But I hate them. I hate every reason. We have to make a decision. Right? I choose you. So, this is what I think. England. Let's go together. From now on, I'll be by your side. Until the end of the world. Until the seas run dry and the rocks crumble." Gwen looked at Parker with a smile. She didn't want to be separated from Parker. "I mean, there are criminals in England too." Gwen nodded repeatedly. "Yeah. Their criminals are too numerous to count." "Too many. For example?" Gwen asked, looking at Parker with a sharp look in her eyes. "Jack the Ripper." Parker's words made Gwen laugh. "What's wrong? Jack the Ripper is still at large, don't you know?" Parker said seriously. Gwen laughed and kissed Parker directly. "I told you I won't leave you," Parker said while hugging Gwen. He was in the sky, just as he thought, and he wanted to go to England with Gwen. "I want to stay in New York," Gwen suddenly said, leaning her head on Parker's shoulder. "What? Aren't you going to Oxford?" Parker looked at Gwen in surprise. She told Parker that she was going to study at Columbia University. It happened to be in New York, so she didn't have to leave her hometown. Parker was also a little happy to hear that, and smiled at Gwen. "I should tell Uncle Ben and the others about this good news. I told them before that I might follow you to England. They are preparing for me, worried that they will be unfamiliar with the place after I go there." "Yeah." Gwen nodded, agreeing with Parker's idea. This should be told to them. It can also make them feel at ease. Just when the two were close, some sparks suddenly appeared somewhere in the distance, and then half of New York City went dark. Parker and Gwen found that something was wrong, looking into the distance and muttering to themselves, "What's going on over there? Is it Maximum?" As Maximum completely cut off the power supply system of the entire New York City power grid, the entire New York City also went completely dark. "He must have cut off the power supply system of the entire New York City," Gwen said as New York City gradually fell into darkness. At this time, the entire New York City fell into panic. The airport staff was about to guide the plane PNA 322 flight to land, but suddenly the power went out. They were instantly confused. The airport manager tried to let the technicians restore the power supply. "There should be an emergency plan for power outages, right? Some emergency measures or something," Parker said, looking at the city below, which was almost dark except for the car lights. Gwen looked at a certain place, at the power plant. "You can restart the system in an emergency, but if he cuts the transmission cable, there will never be emergency measures. How can I stop him? Every time I get close to him, he burns out my transmitter." Parker frowned. "He has not found a way to avoid damage to the transmitter so far. Have you tried to direct the electricity to the ground?" Gwen asked. "Tried everything. Rubber, plastic. Have you tried to magnetize the electricity?" "I haven't tried this." This touches on Parker's knowledge blind spot. "Okay. Remember the natural science class in the 8th grade? If you use a battery to magnetize a nail." Gwen didn't finish Parker's words and continued. "There will be an electric charge, yes." Gwen nodded. Chapter 181. Gwen, very smart. I really like her. Tony looked at her with appreciation after taking a sip. This girl is really suitable for Peter Parker. She has high IQ, high EQ, gentle and considerate, and is not afraid of danger to be with Parker. There are too few girls like this. Yeah. Who doesn't like her? Banner echoed, sliding the holographic projection in front of him. Hey, stop drinking. Come and help me look at this. Banner shouted at Tony. Tony put down the glass and responded, okay, how about this? Is it feasible? Banner asked. Well, I think this is better. Tony tapped his fingers and modified it. Good. Banner looked at the more reasonable composition and nodded with satisfaction. That Peter must not be serious in class. The first generation Uncle Ben said to Aunt May with a smile. I wonder if our Peter is listening carefully in class? Aunt May said and glanced at Toby Spider. Yeah. Of course I listened carefully. I even won a science award. Aunt May. How could Toby Spider say that he didn't listen carefully? He quickly brought out the award he won in Spider-Man 1. That's good. I hope I don't see you on the sky screen one day, just like the second generation, who don't know scientific knowledge. The first generation Uncle Ben teased. Oh. Toby Spider shrugged helplessly, thinking that he had to review his knowledge well, so as not to embarrass himself. Flight PNA 273, which was about to arrive in New York, didn't know what happened in New York. They called the tower many times, but never received a response. The crew knew that there was no problem on their side, but they couldn't contact the tower. The city was dark, and all the police were dispatched to maintain order. Don't panic, everyone. Please go back to your car. Go back to your car and sit down. Stay calm. Parker came to the road with Gwen in his arms. There were crowded vehicles and panicked citizens everywhere, and the police were still maintaining order. They kept shouting with the loudspeaker, don't panic. Everyone please return to your car. Go back home. Parker took Gwen to find a police officer. Officer. He turned around and was startled when he heard someone shouting and subconsciously shouted, Spider-Man. Oh. Parker was directly shocked by his scream amplified by the loudspeaker and couldn't help covering his ears. Gwen quickly introduced herself to him. My father is Captain George Stacy of the 19th District. Hearing her words, the police officer nodded, and he knew that Spider-Man would not come to him with Gwen for no reason, and said directly, I know who he is. What should we do? Jumper cables. Gwen said immediately. Jumper cables? The police officer looked at Gwen in confusion. Yes. And pure copper wire. Gwen nodded affirmatively. Parker walked up to Gwen and asked loudly, am I speaking louder than usual now? Yes. Gwen frowned as she listened to Parker talking loudly. At the same time, the police officer looked at them in surprise, realizing that they had a special relationship. After a while, the police officer found what Gwen wanted. They made a jumper connection on the battery of a police car. Your clothes will conduct electricity to the ground. Okay. Come on. Parker nodded quickly as Gwen clamped the spider silk launcher with a wire clamp. A little spark appeared and she successfully magnetized the spider silk launcher. Okay. Good. Try it. Quick, quick, quick. Gwen took out the key from her pocket and put it on it, and the keychain was immediately sucked. Very good. It works. Good. Parker was very satisfied. That's why you only got second place, Gwen said with a smile. It's the same old story. Okay, haha. As the two were talking and laughing, a billboard beside them fell down with a bang. Parker turned his head and said solemnly, I have to go. I'll go with you. Gwen wanted to go, but how could Parker agree? You can't come with me. It's too dangerous. Parker refused her immediately. I want to go. I'll go with you. I've read the instructions for the power grid and know how to restart the system. I'm going to go with you and let you know that you need me. Parker shook his head at first, and when he saw that Gwen insisted on going, he covered her mouth and pretended to agree. Okay, shut up. You can go with me. Turn it off. Parker pointed to the front of the car cover. Just as Gwen reached out to touch the front cover, Parker shot out spider silk and stuck her hand on it. Sorry. I love you. Don't hate me. After saying that, he swung away on the spider silk. Gwen looked at Parker's leaving figure and immediately became anxious. She subconsciously shouted, Peter. Then she reacted and immediately covered her mouth. We still don't have a backup generator. Get me an engineer. A doctor in the hospital said hurriedly while walking. I urgently need a respirator now. A doctor looked at the patient and Aunt May said after hearing it, it's powered by batteries. I'll get it for you. Right away, she ran quickly to the respirator and picked it up. Ha 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 ha. So cute. Gwen subconsciously called out her real name. Ha 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 ha. Otto laughed and watched Parker leave Gwen there. Peter really took great pains to deliberately lie to her so that she wouldn't follow him and leave her there to avoid danger. Rose also said with great emotion. Peter. Gwen glared at Parker. He actually dared to lie to her. Seeing Gwen's angry eyes, Parker immediately said from the heart, sorry, baby. I was wrong. I won't do this again next time. Gwen, Peter is doing this for your own good. George defended Parker on the side. As a father, he could understand Parker's behavior of not wanting Gwen to take risks. Dad, I'm Spider-Man too. Gwen looked at George to see with dissatisfaction, and then saw Parker nodding in agreement, and glared at him fiercely. There will be no next time. And you can't trap me now. Gwen snorted twice. Helen smiled and brought the food to the table. Parker immediately stepped forward to help, and finally let him escape. May. It seems that you are doing a good job. Uncle Ben looked at Aunt May and smiled. He didn't expect Aunt May to really work in the hospital. Yeah. It's okay as long as it seems that I can help. Aunt May smiled. They were also having dinner. Because Parker went to Gwen's house, the meal was simple. Chapter 182. In New York City, Maximum continuously fired lightning, bombarding the city continuously, with a large amount of lightning falling between tall buildings and on the main roads. A police car drove by, but was blown away by a current. Citizens fled in panic, and lightning kept falling. Parker quickly approached Maximum on the spiderweb, landed on a water tower, and looked at Maximum attached to the building in front of him. Do you see me, Spider-Man? It's time to let fate make a conclusion. Maximum said, turning into electricity and leaving the building. Parker immediately followed the direction of Maximum's lightning, climbing on his own spiderweb in midair to speed up his speed. Maximum's current kept shuttling, and Parker followed him all the way. At the same time, on a plane about to arrive in New York, the passengers did not know what happened in New York. Because of Maximum's electromagnetic force, the crew found that they were disturbed and immediately tried to contact the ground. They reported that the instrument and radar had failed, but the tower was out of power and could not respond to them. The tower staff had previously noted the route and found that the two planes were about to cross each other with only 4.5 minutes left. Parker knew nothing about the airport. He chased Maximum to a clock tower, climbed to the top, and looked at Maximum, who was flashing in the power grid below. You are too late, Spider-Man. The power grid I designed. It belongs to me. I want to take it back. I will control everything. I will be God to them. Maximum declared to Parker while floating in the middle of the power grid. Parker complained, God named Spark. His words angered Maximum, and he immediately waved his hand to summon a flash of light that attracted the electricity in the power grid and attacked Parker on the top of the clock tower. Parker jumped up suddenly to avoid the attack and then made a leap of faith and flipped over and landed on the water pipe below. He fired a spider silk to grab the yellow water pipe and pulled hard to tear off one end of the water pipe. The water column gushed out from it and he controlled the direction to spray towards Maximum. Don't even think about it this time. Maximum directly condensed electricity to confront the water column head on and then taunted, is this all you can do? Come on. As he said this, the electric current shot out from his hand became more powerful, instantly piercing through the water flow. Parker was immediately knocked out, and the person under him was completely blown apart. At night, at Maximum's home, Maximum. I didn't expect you to be so second year. Parker teased Maximum. Today is Maximum's birthday, and he and Gwen came to attend as promised. I'm sorry. Maximum apologized with a wry smile. He felt very sorry for what he did in the sky, and was very grateful that Parker still came to attend his birthday regardless of the past. Then the doorbell rang. Maximum apologized and went to open the door. He was surprised to find that it was Harry. Happy birthday, Maximum. Harry smiled at him. Harry? Parker and Gwen were also very surprised by his arrival. They stood up and looked at him. Why? Didn't I say I would come? Harry walked to Parker and hugged him and smiled. Yeah. But shouldn't you be busy? Government investigators are still investigating Norman's collusion with foreign forces at Osborne Industries. Harry actually has time to come here. Oh, don't mention it. After the old man McCann was arrested, Dr. Kafka confessed everything, and McCann also admitted that he hired a killer to kill Legitrator. Harry waved his hand and said, "What?" Parker stared at Harry in disbelief. He thought he did it perfectly, but he was one step behind. "I found the evidence." Then Harry told Parker everything that happened in the past 2 days. Parker then realized that the mastermind behind the spider-human experiment was actually McCann, and Legitrator was just a scapegoat, and he silenced her. But what Harry didn't say was that Norman was actually behind this matter. Without Norman's approval, McCann would not be so eager to do the experiment. But for the reputation of his late father, Harry concealed it. McCann knew that it would be useless, even if he told it himself, because Norman had died long ago, and he had no evidence, so he could only bear it himself. At the same time, because too much time had passed, many evidences could not be found. Although Richard Parker revealed Norman's affairs in the sky, he only cleared his own stain. Although Richard Parker was in a sense to prevent the spider gene he studied from becoming biological weapons, but in the final analysis, he stole the research results privately. But he is dead, and there is no need for the world to dwell on the issue of a dead person, so the discussion about Richard Parker disappeared soon. Norman is dead, and the investigators can't pull Norman out of the grade 4 trial. They can only investigate those who were involved in the past. It happens that McCann and Legitrator are one of the masterminds behind the scenes. This investigation is expected to last for a long time, but it has nothing to do with Harry. It's just that Osborne Industries has shrunk from the initial $200 billion in assets to less than $50 billion. But at least Harry feels that he is still alive and has gained extraordinary physical strength and power, unlike him in the sky, who was poisoned to death by spider venom. If it weren't for the fact that the company has so many affairs now, and he has to make decisions on many things, he would have wanted to follow Parker to save the citizens. While Parker and Maximum were fighting, Gwen was trying to get rid of the spider silk. She kept cutting with a nail clipper, and finally cut the spider silk. She pushed the hood down hard. Parker kicked Maximum from behind unexpectedly, while swinging on the spider silk. Maximum controlled his body in the air, and released a lightning bolt to attack him. Parker immediately did a front flip to avoid it, as soon as he landed on a pillar. The next second, the pillar he was just on was directly blown into pieces. Maximum immediately turned into electricity to catch up with Parker after missing the attack, and fired electricity again. Parker's super spider sense allowed him to avoid the attack again. He grabbed a piece of debris with the spider silk, turned over in midair, and threw it towards Maximum. Maximum wanted to attack again, but was hit hard. Parker did a backflip, and then fired spider silk left and right to make a slingshot to catapult himself out. Come on. Maximum saw Parker's move, roared at him, and then adjusted his body shape. Maximum wanted to punch Parker to shoot electric current, but Parker was faster and knocked him down with a bear hug before he could complete his move. While falling, Parker adjusted his body shape to let Maximum hit the ground first, but the force was too strong, and Maximum took advantage of the momentum to roll over and pressed Parker underneath. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183. Wow. He's really awesome. Toby Spider sighed more than once. Just watching Garfield Spider's movement seemed like nothing, but only the person involved knew how fast lightning was. Garfield Spider was able to remain unhitted under such a fast attack, and even took the opportunity to counterattack. His spider sense was really much stronger than Toby Spider. If it were Toby Spider, he felt that he could only take Maximum's attack and then punch him hard. The two of them were completely different types of Spider-Man. Tony looked at Maximum's action of absorbing electrical energy and suddenly had an idea and said, "Banner, what do you think would happen if we did the opposite and absorbed all of Maximum's electrical energy?" "I don't know." But this might be a good idea. Dr. Banda thought about it for a while and felt that this might be feasible. Okay, Jarvis, put my idea in the electros file. Tony made a decision immediately. Maximum pinched Parker's neck viciously. Parker asked, "Are you ready to give up?" As soon as he finished speaking, Maximum sprayed electricity from his mouth directly into Parker's head. But he obviously didn't know that Parker's battle suit was not conductive. His attack was fruitless and Parker took the opportunity to kick him into the air. Then Parker immediately launched Spider Silk to stick to Maximum. Maximum immediately condensed the current and grabbed the Spider Silk, trying to destroy his Spider Silk launcher. The high intensity current flowed down the Spider Silk, instantly turning the Spider Silk launcher red, but there was no malfunction. "Oh, thank you, Gwen Stacy." Parker thanked Gwen while throwing the Spider Silk back fiercely. Maximum was unable to resist Parker's power in the air and was directly smashed into the electric net by him. The moment he landed, Maximum burst out a strong electromagnetic field. Parker was directly blown away by this huge impact force. The whole person rolled on the ground and hit a stone heavily. He fell to the ground weakly and climbed up, feeling as if his body was not his own. He couldn't help but complain, "Get rid of it, it's just your bones, your muscles and your organs." Who? He shook his head, and then there was a sound in front of him, and he saw an electric current wrapped around a pole of the power grid. Oh, no way. As soon as Parker got up, he saw the electric current quickly passing through several poles, and then flashed in front of him, and turned into Maximum, punching him hard, and then disappearing on the spot. OA. Parker only had time to let out a scream of pain before falling to the ground. Before he could get up, Maximum rushed over from several poles again. Maximum flashed and hit him again with a strange sound effect. He was hit and fell twice. "I hate this song." Parker cursed and stood up and saw Maximum flashing wildly among the poles. Then he hit Parker from behind again, this time not only knocking him away, but also hitting him against the pillars continuously. Parker had just landed for less than half a second. The pillar behind him burst out a powerful electromagnetic field, knocking him into the air again. Before he landed, Maximum had already arrived behind him and knocked him into the sky again. Parker wanted to shoot Spider Silk to stabilize himself, but Maximum saw through his idea and bound his hands and feet with electric current. Parker tried hard to pull the Spider Silk to get out of the predicament, but the Spider Silk could not withstand the force and broke, and then Parker was fixed in the air by Maximum. In front of him, Maximum raised his hands and released electricity. Parker kept struggling to shoot Spider Silk, but it was always unsuccessful. "Spider-Man, I bet you have never seen this," Maximum said viciously to Parker. "It has to be me, right?" Gwen saw that Parker's Spider Silk launcher resisted Maximum's electric current and couldn't help but look at Parker and smiled triumphantly. Yeah. Parker looked at Gwen and nodded repeatedly. He had to admit that without Gwen, he really didn't think that he could magnetize the launcher. Harry laughed while eating cake. "Peter is not serious in school. Ha ha ha. Hey, I helped you with your homework when you were a kid." Parker rolled his eyes at Harry. Harry stopped talking immediately and ate a bite of cake silently. Maximum looked a little restrained sitting aside. After all, he was pulling Peter Parker into a big letter shape on the sky screen and fixed him in the air. How could he dare to speak? He was keeping his head down and shutting himself up. Just when Maximum was about to kill Parker, a police car broke through the iron fence and rushed in. As soon as Maximum turned his head to look, he was directly thrown out by the car. The current that bound Parker dissipated directly after Maximum lost control, and Parker fell from the air, smashing a dent in the pipe on the ground. Gwen got out of the car and shouted angrily at Parker, "Are you serious? You actually stuck me to the car? Who do you think you are? A caveman? You tied me up and ran off to fight? I know how to help you." Parker staggered to his feet. "You shouldn't be here. What are you doing here?" Parker pulled Gwen behind him, trying to get her out of this dangerous place. "I've read the instructions for the power grid. I can restart the system." Gwen didn't want to leave. She wanted to help Parker. "You can't stay here now. I'm not kidding you. You can't stay here now. It's too dangerous here." Parker grabbed Gwen's hand and tried to persuade her to leave. He knew very well how dangerous Maximum was, and he couldn't guarantee Gwen's safety at all. No one can make the decision for me. Okay. No one can. This is my choice. Okay. Gwen looked at Parker with a firm look. Parker turned his head helplessly. Gwen tilted her head and looked at Parker and said, "My choice. I have the final say." Then Gwen hid behind Parker and looked at Maximum, who had not yet gotten up, and asked, "How do we stop him now?" Parker saw that Gwen was determined to stay here, so he could only say, "Okay." He is charged. Just like a battery. What happens if the battery is overcharged? It will explode. Gwen replied while backing away. Right. Parker nodded. So we return the favor? Beautiful. Gwen immediately understood Parker's idea and praised. Okay. I think I can reconnect the cable, but I want you to restart the system. Okay. When I say restart the power, you restart it. No matter what happens, you must restart it anyway. Parker solemnly instructed her. Gwen looked at him worriedly. Chapter 184. Toby Spider looked at the second generation Gwen worriedly. She was just an ordinary girl. It was terrible for her to rush into such a dangerous place. As long as Maximum wanted to attack Gwen, Garfield Spider would not be able to protect her. After all, Maximum's movement speed was obviously faster than Parker, who needed to borrow power. It can be seen from the fact that Toby Spider needed to climb on the spider silk to speed up after launching the spider web from Garfield Spider, because he tried it himself and found that it was indeed faster. I hope she will be fine. Toby Spider still remembered what Cheyenne Moo said at the beginning. He didn't think Cheyenne Moo would shoot without a target. I hope she will have good luck. After hearing Toby Spider's words, the first generation Aunt May silently prayed for her. Maximum, who had been lying for a long time after being hit by the car, suddenly opened his eyes. Maximum was very angry after being hit by someone. He wanted to get rid of Spider-Man completely. He stood up with gritted teeth. Seeing this, Parker urged, "Go, go." Then he turned his head and looked at Maximum. At this moment, he seemed to see George Stacy standing next to the police car and looking at him. Just as Parker was distracted, blue and white electric light appeared on the police car behind George. The next second, Maximum rushed out of George's Phantom and rushed straight to Parker's face. Parker ducked to avoid the attack. Maximum immediately fired electric light after missing the attack. Parker jumped into the air to avoid it, swinging around a pillar with spider silk, and Maximum followed closely and continued to fire electric current. Parker pulled the spider silk tight and soared upwards, avoiding the first one, then released the spider silk and dodged the second and third electric lights in midair. Then he fired the spider silk again and fell to the ground with a handsome front flip. Maximum launched attacks one after another, and many of the surrounding pillars were destroyed and fell down. Just as he was entangled with Maximum, Gwen successfully came to the control room and found the body of the staff member lying on the ground as soon as he entered the door. She panicked for a moment and then quickly stepped over the body to the control console. She found that the control button was locked. She looked around and found that a staff member was holding a key on his finger. He should have wanted to restart the power grid after it was cut off, but was electrocuted to death by Maximum on the spot. There were obvious traces of electric shock on his palm. The plane PNA 322 over New York did not know that it was about to collide with another plane PNA 273. Both sides were still flying at high speed, and the tower could not contact the two planes. Parker was not aware of the plane. He was desperately avoiding Maximum's attack and felt a little exhausted. Although Maximum was trying very hard to attack him, Parker's spider sense was too strong. He could always predict Maximum's electric current attack. Parker kept using the pillars to avoid Maximum's electric current. Even if Maximum smashed the entire pillar into pieces in an instant after Parker fell sideways on it, Parker could still escape with his hands at the critical moment. After avoiding the extremely thrilling attack, he immediately fired spider silk with both hands to pull himself away, and then predicted Maximum's attack again in the air. As soon as Maximum waved his hand, Parker made an evasive move. Maximum's attack almost all missed. After fighting for a long time, he only caught Parker once before, which made him feel extremely angry. He showed up and roared and continued to chase Parker. The passengers on flight PNA 273 didn't know anything. They were still reading books leisurely, and more passengers were taking the opportunity to rest. The ground tower looked at the watch and said in horror, "There are still 60 seconds to impact. OMG. No way. The two planes are going to collide. Damn airlines. Don't they have backup power? Fuck. Maximum. What a jerk. Peter Parker is so awesome. He almost dodged all the attacks." People from all over the world saw this and talked about it. Some were terrified that the plane was about to collide. Some scolded the airport for not having enough emergency measures. Some scolded Maximum, and some worshipped Spider-Man. The airport managers were as worried as a cow because the passengers waiting at the airport burst into great dissatisfaction. They were worried that what happened on the sky would really happen. There were also countless passengers on the plane, and they were all panicked. The crew and flight attendants could only try to comfort them and tell these terrified passengers that everything was normal on their plane. Gwen immediately unlocked the lock after getting the key, while Parker continued to swing quickly on the spider web, followed closely by Maximum's electric current, and almost all the pillars attacked by the electric light collapsed. After dodging this attack, he avoided Maximum's oncoming lightning and then landed on the transmission cable that Maximum had cut off. Parker fired Spider Silk to temporarily stick to Maximum, and Gwen opened the lid and was ready to press the button to restart the system at any time. Then she looked at Parker in front of her, who was constantly firing Spider Silk to form a spider web to pull all the cables together. Maximum finally broke free from the Spider Silk and immediately attacked Parker. Parker dodged flexibly and fell to the bottom. At this time, he had countless Spider Silk in his hand, all connected to the transmission cable. Because he was holding Spider Silk in his hand, Parker could not dodge. Maximum took the opportunity to fire electric current to hit Parker. A large amount of electric current continued to hit Parker's body from Maximum. Even though the spider suit was not conductive, the powerful electromagnetic force still made Parker feel extremely painful. He knelt on the ground and screamed "Ah!" But Parker still gritted his teeth and endured Maximum's attack, twisting the Spider Silk in his hand together against his electric current and tying a knot. "Now, Gwen. Hurry up. Restart." Parker yelled at Gwen in the distance, and Gwen took a deep breath and flipped the switch. In just a moment, the extremely powerful current turned the Spider Silk in Parker's hand into a bright yellow-red color, and then it went up along Maximum's blue current. Maximum was immediately controlled by this more terrifying current, and Parker couldn't hold the Spider Silk and was shaken out, falling heavily to the ground. Gwen watched Maximum struggling in the air with lingering fear. The golden current bound Maximum tightly, and at the same time, the power of the entire city gradually recovered. Maximum tried hard to struggle to get rid of the bondage, but he was always powerless. As the city's power was restored, the power meter on Maximum's head also increased wildly. It reached full capacity in less than 2 seconds. Maximum gradually couldn't bear the increasingly powerful electricity and kept screaming. Chapter 185. Seeing this, Tony also remembered that this was somewhat similar to the way he killed Obadiah, except that Obadiah was killed by an overloaded reactor, while Maximum was killed by electricity. He can't bear this electricity. It exceeds the load limit of his body. Tony squinted his eyes and looked at Maximum's struggling appearance. "Yeah, you are right. There is a limit to the amount of electricity his body can hold. If he can't dump this electricity, he will definitely die." Banner nodded. He knew very well what Maximum's fate would be. Under such high intensity voltage and current, he might not even leave a complete body. "Come on, let's try this thing." Tony held a round instrument in his hand and placed it on a large battery. The electricity in the battery was sucked away at a very fast speed. "Good. Great. Tony. In the future, if you encounter someone who uses electricity, just install this thing, and it will only take a few seconds to absorb his energy. You can install it on your armor." Banner couldn't help but nodded and praised. If he encounters Maximum in the future, he doesn't need to be afraid. He can just shoot it at the enemy to restrict the opponent. "I thought so too, but it's too big and takes up too much space. It needs to be reduced. Come on, continue to study it." Tony thought so too, but he felt that it was not perfect enough and needed to be further streamlined. The tower also restored power supply, and the staff immediately began to call various flights. Maximum's screams became louder and louder, and cracks began to appear all over his body. Finally, he exploded with a boom, and all the electricity in his body was dispersed to the surroundings. The two planes were getting closer and closer, and the supervisor directed both planes at the same time. "This is the LaGuardia Airport Tower. Turn to 280 heading immediately. There is a plane that conflicts with your heading. Repeat, turn to 280. Take measures immediately." At the same time, the crews of the two planes also found each other's alarms on the radar. The crew immediately turned according to the tower's instructions. The two planes suddenly tilted at a large angle, causing the passengers to panic and fall to one side. At the critical moment, they finally passed each other by tilting, avoiding the fate of the plane being destroyed and people being killed. Seeing the two planes fly safely through the intersection, the tower staff instantly burst into amazing cheers. They stood up and hugged each other. It was almost a big accident. The supervisor and his colleagues clapped their hands and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. He almost thought that his job was going to be gone. After calming down a little, he let everyone go back to work and directed the two planes to land. Aunt May was busy in the hospital. Suddenly, the lights in the hospital came on. Aunt May breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh, thank God. Great. There is electricity. Let's get to work." The camera was pulled over New York. Countless high-rise buildings were lit up. New York has regained its former splendor. In the power grid, Parker's spider silk was still glowing red, taking on the task of connecting the power grid with the city's power transmission. On the ground, below Maximum's explosion, only the meter on his temple was left. As the meter grids on the meter went out one by one, Maximum completely disappeared. "Oh, I'm sorry, Maximum. I'm sorry," Parker said to Maximum. "No, I should apologize. Peter, it's me who made you like this. I have to blame myself. I figured it out. What's the point of having so many people paying attention? It's better to be unknown than to be despised." Maximum replied to Parker with a wry smile, and then he sighed. After seeing his own ending, he figured out a lot of things. Even if he was unknown, it was better than hurting others and himself. "Yeah." Harry nodded in agreement. Recently, many people on the internet have scolded Maximum for not knowing good people. Maximum has also been under a lot of pressure from public opinion. "Okay, don't talk about these unhappy things, Maximum. Be happy. Smile." Gwen looked at Maximum's low mood, encouraged him, and took a photo of him. With Gwen's encouragement, Maximum finally laughed and was no longer so sad. At the same time, many people felt relieved about Maximum's death. Who made him do so many things? I don't know how many people were killed and how many people were trapped. Although there are only a few shots in the sky, you can see many injured citizens and those who are trapped in the elevator waiting for a SCU, and the two planes that almost collided. This made countless people hate Maximum because he caused so many accidents and casualties. Parker was lying on the ground not far away. His body twitched, and he cried out, "Oh." Gwen came downstairs and walked towards him. Parker was still emitting white smoke. He sat up slowly, and suddenly a green UFO flew towards the power grid. Parker walked to the side of the police car and shouted to Gwen, "I think we can still catch the plane." Hearing this, Gwen laughed. Parker suddenly heard a movement, turned his head and looked back. Gwen also saw the flying object in the sky. Parker looked at it vigilantly, stretched out his hand and ordered Gwen, "Gwen, stay there." The man stepped on the glider and laughed evilly. As he approached the ground, Parker realized that the other party was actually Harry. He was wearing a suit of armor. "What?" Harry stood up in surprise and couldn't help but exclaimed. He thought he was dead, but he was still alive. Parker and Gwen also looked at Harry in the sky in disbelief. Traces of spider venom could be seen on his face and forehead, making him look a little ugly. What's going on? Why is he still alive? Shouldn't he have been poisoned to death? Toby Spider asked incomprehensibly. The first generation Gwen also looked at it in confusion. She lowered her head and thought carefully, and said, "Do you remember the military armor that Harry introduced when he was reading the documents?" The healing ability to repair battlefield damage? Toby Spider said uncertainly. Yeah. He is still alive because of the armor on him. The first generation Gwen nodded and said. At this time, the sky began to go back, and time returned to the time when Harry was poisoned. Harry fell to the ground after being poisoned and crawled towards the room where the armor was stored. Every time he crawled, it was very painful, but he finally struggled to crawl near the armor. He stood up with a tenacious will to survive and put on the armor. The armor immediately detected that his life was in danger and began to heal him. The armor was completely put on by Harry, and the glider under his feet also started up, but unfortunately he was still affected by the spider venom. The whites of his eyes turned into a slightly turbid yellow, and his face and body were left with extremely ugly scars. Chapter 186. Harry, that armor. Parker turned around and looked at Harry in surprise. Yeah, I've seen it, but I didn't expect it to be so powerful. It can actually cure that terrible spider venom. Harry couldn't help swallowing his saliva. I think you can be a new superhero. Parker looked at Harry and smiled. Harry had super physical strength, and with this armor, even he couldn't beat Harry. Forget it. The company has been in turmoil recently. It won't be too late for me to join you after I stabilize the company. Harry waved his hand. Osborn Industries now has a lot of messes waiting for him to clean up, and he doesn't have that much free time. If he hadn't said he would come to Maximum's birthday party, he wouldn't be here. He's probably still busy in the company. It's that armor. The first generation Gwen predicted successfully and hugged Toby Spider happily. Toby Spider smiled and hugged her, saying, "You have a good memory, Gwen." Then he kissed her. The first generation Harry and Tony were both interested in the armor on the second generation Harry. They all wanted to study and replicate its functions. The only difference is that the first generation Harry has a similar armor, but the healing function is not so strong. Although Tony has a more advanced Mark armor, he has not studied the healing function. He believes in stronger defense, more functions, and it is best not to get hurt at all. Although he often gets hurt, he always enjoys it. This time, the second generation Harry's armor gave him inspiration. If the armor really can't withstand the unimaginable huge energy, then quickly healing the injuries caused by the energy he bears is nothing more than another option. He did it as soon as he said it, and immediately ordered Jarvis to record this idea and immediately collect treatment methods for injuries from major hospitals around the world. Harry looked at Spider-Man in front of him, turned his head, and glanced behind him, but was surprised to find that she was Gwen. He looked at Gwen in disbelief, and the smile on his face disappeared in an instant. Then he turned his head and looked at Spider-Man in front of him, and Gwen who was opposite him, as if he had thought of something, and thought of the relationship between Peter Parker and Gwen. Harry quickly guessed Spider-Man's true identity. He looked at Parker and smiled evilly. "Peter." When Spider-Man says no, it's you who said no. Harry looked at Parker and was furious. He didn't expect that his good friend would reject him and watch him die without doing anything. In an instant, Harry was furious and secretly vowed to take revenge on Peter Parker. "Harry, what did you do?" Parker looked at Harry in confusion. How could Harry become like this after just half a day? "You pushed me to this point. You are my friend. But you betrayed me." Harry looked at Parker with an evil smile, questioned and roared at him, and his anger continued to burn. "No. I want to protect you." Parker shook his head and wanted to explain to Harry, but Harry couldn't listen now. "Oh, look at me." Harry's voice was trembling a little. He was now in this state of neither human nor ghost, all because of Peter Parker. "Hey, it's going to be fine. Everything will be fine." Parker tried to convince Harry. If possible, he really didn't want to quarrel with his brother, but Harry was now determined to take revenge on him. "You don't give people hope. You take hope away." Harry looked at Parker with gritted teeth. It was Parker who told him this, but it was also Parker who refused to give him hope. "No, Harry." Parker shook his head again. He didn't mean that, but he didn't know how to explain this to Harry. Harry was too stubborn to think that his blood would definitely save him. "I'm going to take your hope away." Harry raised his eyebrows at Parker with a wicked smile, and then turned and rushed to Gwen behind him. "No, Gwen. Run." Parker immediately realized that something was wrong when he heard Harry's words, and Gwen immediately ran away. But how could running on the ground be faster than flying? Aha! Gwen screamed and was caught by Harry. Parker rushed over but missed. He immediately fired spider silk and followed Harry. Harry! Harry! Put her down! Parker shouted at Harry anxiously, but Harry hated Parker to the bone at this time. How could he put Gwen down? He flew higher and higher with Gwen. Parker grabbed the spider silk and ran and swung to the top of the bell tower quickly. He jumped with all his strength and fired spider silk at the glider in the air. But Harry's glider was faster than Parker was faster and higher than expected. The spider silk could not reach the glider. Harry circled around the clock tower with an evil smile. Parker kept jumping and trying to pull the glider with the spider silk. Harry, stop. This is not you. Harry, you are not like this. Harry, let her down. Parker tried to persuade Harry again after many unsuccessful attempts. Hearing this, Harry stopped circling and looked at Parker below in midair. Gwen also said to Harry, Harry, but she was interrupted by Harry after only one sentence. Harry is dead. He glared at Gwen, and his anger towards Parker also implicated Gwen. Harry, this is between you and me. Do you want a duel? Come to me. Let her go. Parker shouted at Harry from below. He couldn't stand Harry's behavior. No matter what grudges they had, Gwen should not be involved, because George warned him about this before he died. Harry glanced at Parker below and said lightly, okay. Then he let go of Gwen and let her fall. No. Parker yelled and immediately jumped up to catch Gwen, breaking the glass at the top and falling into the bell tower. Parker adjusted his body in midair to let himself be below and bear all the damage for Gwen. Gwen was stimulated and couldn't help but gasp. Parker looked at her and asked, are you okay? She shook her head and replied, no, but as soon as she finished speaking, she saw a pumpkin grenade fell next to them. Parker immediately turned around and protected Gwen on the other side. He used his back to bear the damage. As the explosion occurred, the iron bridge broke and collapsed. Gwen fell down, and Parker quickly reached out to grab her. I caught you, Gwen. I'll put you there, Parker said, letting go of his hand and then shooting spider silk to stick to Gwen's palm and put her on the gear below. Chapter 187. When Toby Spider saw Parker put Gwen there, his ominous premonition became stronger. He carefully recalled what the narrator said. He said, I don't like to use spider silk to save people. I prefer to hold each other because it is safer. That is indeed safe. I saved my Gwen. He said, I perfectly demonstrated how to save people and let someone learn it well. Oh, no. No way. Peter Parker and Gwen, separated by yin and yang. Toby Spider came to his senses and immediately looked at the sky with wide eyes. What's wrong, Peter? What happened? The first generation Gwen asked in confusion. Oh, damn it. He saved so many people with spider silk. Didn't he realize it? Toby Spider recalled the first time Garfield Spider used spider silk to save people when he saved the son of the foreman who helped him with the tower crane. After that, he used spider silk many times and once threw Gwen out of the window and hung her with spider silk. He relied on spider silk so much that he forgot its shortcomings. The first generation Gwen looked at Toby Spider's uncertain face and was a little confused. Toby Spider immediately told her what he guessed. She immediately covered her mouth and exclaimed, and then the first generation Gwen thought about it carefully and found that it was indeed the same as what Toby Spider said, but they subconsciously ignored it. Then she said, we are separated by life and death. If there was no venom, would I have died under Eddie's gun? It's just that Cheyenne deliberately arranged for venom to come to me to avoid my death. Yeah, that's right. Venom is under my control. Although I control it to attach to your clothes now, it is different from the beginning, when it insisted on staying on you without my consent. Another me, damn it, I can't remind him. I can only hope that their universe can see ahead of time and avoid tragedy like us. Toby Spider sighed. The first generation Gwen silently hugged Toby Spider's arm and looked at Cheyenne worriedly. Tony and Nick Fury also noticed this, but Tony only thought of it after Banner reminded him, so Tony's face was very ugly, although he had known that this was likely to be the result. But when it was really about to happen, Tony was still in a very bad mood. He could only hope that this guess was wrong, just like they guessed that Harry was dead, but he was not dead. What he didn't expect was that the first generation Harry and Toby Spider were at odds with each other, and in the second generation, they were still at odds with each other, and Harry wanted to kill Gwen. George's face was as gloomy as water. He also remembered this, but he didn't say anything. Cheyenne Moo deliberately gave Gwen the superpowers of Spider-Man, perhaps to avoid this ending. Alas. Uncle Ben sighed. No one expected that Harry was not only alive, but also wanted to deal with Gwen to retaliate against Parker. Fortunately, they knew that Harry would never do anything to Gwen in reality, and they were not too worried. Harry looked at Parker and Gwen with an apologetic look on his face. He didn't expect that he would do such a thing. Parker held Gwen's little hand tightly. He believed that he could definitely save Gwen and defeat Harry, just like Toby Spider defeated the first generation Harry. Gwen was also a little nervous. She didn't know what would happen next, but she also believed that Parker could definitely save her. After Parker put Gwen down, he immediately did a backflip to avoid Harry's rapid impact, and then pulled out a spider silk to fix the walls on both sides, horizontally in front of Harry. Fortunately, Harry's hang glider had just turned, and the speed was not fast, so he was not tripped by the spider silk and fell down. Seeing this, Parker immediately did a front flip to the other side. When he jumped to halfway, he fired another spider silk and pulled it on the railing, blocking the walkway. He planned to use these spider silks to make the already cramped space in the clock tower even narrower. Then he did another handstand and front flip to the original position without stopping. The next second Harry came over, and he followed Parker closely. Parker landed on the railing and began to run on the wall with big strides, and then jumped away and fired a spider silk when Harry was about to hit him. Then he grabbed a spider thread that had been fixed from top to bottom and turned around. In the picture, you can see that there are already 4 or 5 spider threads across the clock tower from different angles, and then he jumped back to the walkway. Gwen stood up carefully and walked towards the middle of the rotating gears. She wanted to get to a safer place. Parker had jumped into the air without knowing when. He shot out spider threads and pulled himself back. He kicked Harry hard and clamped his waist with his legs. Harry's glider was affected. The sound began to spin in circles. Parker strangled Harry's neck with one hand behind his back and hit Harry's head twice with the other hand. Then Parker shot out a spider silk and strangled Harry's neck with it. Harry instantly realized that something was wrong and immediately increased the power of the glider and slammed into the wall. Under the high-speed collision, Harry successfully got rid of Parker on his back and pushed half of his body into the wall, but before he could catch his breath, Parker supported the wall that had not been completely broken and kicked him out. Then he immediately grabbed a spider silk and spun it around, then used the inertia of centrifugal force to kick Harry's head hard. Harry was hit by this powerful blow and could no longer stand on the glider. He flew out and hit a steel beam. Then he fell heavily on an iron bridge in the clock tower. The glider lost control, automatically searched for its master, and accelerated downward. The 2 gears below where Gwen was standing were smashed to pieces, and Gwen fell down with them. Parker immediately fired a spider silk to pull her up after falling down. Parker kept pulling the spider silk back, trying to pull Gwen up, but Harry suddenly rushed out and grabbed Parker's neck. Parker held the spider silk in his hand and did not dare to let go. So Harry grabbed her neck and smashed her hard on the gear and pressed her under him. Seeing the spider silk in Parker's hand, Harry immediately stepped on his wrist. Parker fell down and Gwen slid down a bit. The gear turned and pulled the spider silk to the other side. Fortunately, an iron rod stuck the gear. Harry freed one hand and took out a special weapon, trying to kill Parker, but he turned his head to avoid it and clamped his arm so that he could not move. Parker grabbed Harry's face with one hand and took the opportunity to press Harry's hand with his leg so that he could not stab him at all. Harry grabbed Parker's hand and tried to move it away from his face. Parker suddenly stumbled forward, causing Harry to let go of his hand. Harry took the opportunity to punch Harry. Harry immediately stabbed Parker with a rage, and Parker immediately shot a spider silk to bind his left hand to a gear beside him. Chapter 188. Harry immediately grabbed his neck with his right hand. Parker knew that this would not work. Then he saw the gear above Harry's head and immediately shot spider silk there. Then the spider silk was wrapped around Harry's neck twice. The gear behind turned, and Harry was immediately strangled. Parker finally found time to look down. At this moment, the stick stuck and the gear began to be unable to bear the force and the gear turned another gear. The iron stick immediately bent and deformed and was completely broken and fell down, as if foreshadowing Gwen's fate. Parker heard that the gear was about to turn again, and immediately turned his head and stuck his feet in the middle of the gear. The spider silk was almost broken. Oh, no way. Toby Spider looked at this scene and became more and more worried. The first generation Gwen stuck to his side tightly and watched nervously. She will be fine. She will definitely not. Peter Parker will definitely be able to save her, she murmured to herself. After hearing this, Toby Spider patted her palms, signaling her not to worry too much. Maybe he could save her? Jarvis, if Gwen falls, can Peter Parker save her? Calculate. Tony asked with narrowed eyes. Sir, according to the approximate height calculation, if the second generation Peter Parker is fast enough, he can catch her before landing, but he needs to give himself enough acceleration to catch up with her. Just like the first generation Peter Parker saved the first generation Gwen, he used the falling objects in the air to provide himself with acceleration so as to catch up with her and pick her up. What if there is not enough acceleration? Tony frowned after hearing Jarvis's reply. Then we can only try to use spider silk to save people, but the height is too high and the falling speed is too fast, which may cause the second generation Gwen's cervical vertebrae to fracture. If the spider silk has enough elasticity to cushion, it may not fracture, but it may also fall to the ground. Fuck. Tony cursed after hearing this, and Banner frowned beside him. From the current situation, Gwen's situation is very bad. We can only pray that she will have good luck. Parker stuck the gear with his foot. He and Harry were in a stalemate. The gear in the clock hands outside kept shaking. Gwen looked at Parker above and shouted, "Peter?" At this moment, a spark suddenly appeared in the middle of a gear, and then it shifted. Parker's foot could no longer hold the gear. The spider silk was instantly pinched off. Gwen's hand was light. She only had time to take a breath, and the whole person fell down immediately, and the clock hands outside began to spin wildly. The spider silk that strangled Harry's neck also pulled out many gears, and a large number of fragments fell. Harry was also kicked against the wall by Parker and fainted. Parker immediately turned around and looked at Gwen, who fell down and suddenly jumped towards her. Gwen's figure was reflected on his mask lens. The super spider sense allowed him to see the expression on Gwen's face clearly. Gwen opened her eyes and looked at Parker above. Parker subconsciously used spider silk. A spider silk shot out from Parker's launcher, opened like a palm, and accurately passed through the many obstacles between the two. Gwen fell faster and faster. At this time, tears came out of her eyes. She already knew her fate. Under such a high-speed impact, she would not survive if she used spider silk directly. She closed her eyes silently, and all the time she had spent with Peter Parker seemed to flash through her mind one by one. Parker's spider silk stuck to her clothes. Parker suddenly pulled a steel railing in the middle. The spider silk instantly straightened. The good elasticity prevented the spider silk from directly breaking Gwen's spine. But Gwen continued to fall until her cervical vertebrae were fractured and then hit the ground heavily. Finally, the spider silk rebounded and hung Gwen's body about 1 meter from the ground. Following that, many fragments fell beside Gwen. The time on the clock outside also froze at 1:21. The length of the video playing to this point was exactly 2 hours and 01 minutes. That is, 121 minutes. 121 Gwen's death. Parker looked at Gwen nervously, who was motionless below, and quickly hung the spider silk on the railing and fell down. He came to Gwen, took off his hood in disbelief, and hugged her. Hey, Gwen? Parker pulled the spider silk off her body, held her and squatted on the ground, calling Gwen, but Gwen kept her eyes closed. Gwen. There was a cry in Parker's voice, a cavity, hugged her tightly. Breathe. Gwen. Parker found that Gwen had stopped breathing, put his hand on her cheek, and called her name. His eyes were completely red. You're okay, Gwen. Seeing blood flowing from Gwen's nostrils, Parker cried sadly, hold on. He couldn't imagine that he had lost his beloved like this, but no matter how he shouted, Gwen showed no sign of life. Gwen. Gwen. No. Please. 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 Parker hoped that this was just a nightmare, or that Gwen would suddenly wake up with a big breath in the next second, but it didn't happen, and the bloody reality was in front of him. Parker's face became red due to excitement and sadness. He lowered his head and cried, and put his face against Gwen's face. I can't live without you. As the camera gradually zoomed up, there was only the dead Gwen and the crying Parker there. Tonight, the clock outside the clock tower was set at 1:21. Fuck. Tony threw the wine glass on the table away. It was really the same as Jarvis' analysis. Gwen was dead. Whether she had a cervical fracture or her back of the head hit the ground, she was dead. Banner silently drank the wine in the glass and closed his eyes silently. He felt extremely sorry. The second generation Peter Parker lost the woman he loved most. Nick Fury also sighed slightly. Many people had guessed that Gwen might die a long time ago, but when they really saw it with their own eyes, no one could avoid a moment of sadness. Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. I'm sorry. Harry covered his face and felt that he had no face to face Parker. Parker closed his eyes silently. Only then did he realize that the person the narrator said he should learn from was referring to him. Gwen leaned gently on his shoulder. Oh, Peter, it's okay. I'm still here with you. I won't leave you. Chapter 189. Parker took a deep breath and realized his mistake because he really liked to use spider silk, including when catching thieves, because spider silk is convenient and fast. So much so that he ignored the possible dangers and only woke up when he was slapped by Cheyenne Moo at this moment. He relied too much on spider silk and killed Gwen. If he thought of this problem, if he used other things to speed himself up like Toby Spider, maybe he could catch up and hug her like Toby Spider saved the first generation Gwen. Fortunately, nothing happened in Cheyenne Moo. Gwen was still sitting next to him, but Parker felt suffocated every time he thought about Gwen leaving him. When seeing Gwen die, Helen and her children exclaimed. Helen couldn't help but stand up. George sighed, and the scene he was most worried about still happened. Fortunately, Cheyenne Moo predicted this and gave Gwen a gift directly so that she could solve most of the troubles by becoming Spider-Man. Toby Spider clenched his fists, but he didn't know where to vent his anger. He could only punch a wall with anger, breaking the wall into pieces. Peter. The first generation Gwen looked at Toby Spider with some concern. She had never seen him so angry before. She knew that he was angry at the other self for being too dependent on spider silk, and that he could only watch helplessly, even though he had thought of it. Huh. I'm fine, Gwen. I'm fine. Huh. After Toby Spider smashed the wall with a punch, he recovered a little. He took a few deep breaths before looking at her and said, he should be sadder than anyone else now. The first generation Gwen looked at Garfield Spider and said, yeah, I know. Toby Spider nodded. He knew this very well, but it didn't stop him from being angry with Garfield Spider. People all over the world also lamented Gwen's death. Many citizens wanted to know if Gwen Stacy was really dead. Will it be like Harry, where everyone thought he was dead but he wasn't? Due to the lag in news, many people don't know about Parker and Gwen, because many reporters in New York don't dare to follow and report on them at will. Because the mayor of New York has publicly stated that if anyone causes inconvenience to Spider-Man and his family for reporting, he will be severely punished. So there are relatively few reports about Spider-Man's private life. There are more reports about him catching criminals, and the crime rate in New York has continued to fall recently. However, after seeing that countless citizens are curious about the situation of Gwen and Peter Parker, the mayor decided to hold a press conference to announce the Spider couple to the world. He plans to shape Parker and Gwen into the patron saints of New York to attract more companies and wealthy people to settle in. He can also make plans for the future, and it is not impossible to go further by using this as a basis for promotion. At Gwen's funeral, surrounded by many police officers, Helen Stacy and her 3 sons burst into tears, and Parker and Aunt May stood there quietly watching. As time passed, everyone left. Aunt May touched Parker's arm with concern. Parker kissed her forehead. Aunt May knew that Parker needed to be alone, so she left silently. Parker stood in front of the tombstone in a daze, thinking about the close past times with Gwen. His chest kept rising and falling, indicating that he was not at peace. Since that day, Parker appeared in front of Gwen's grave every day, thinking about her silently. No matter spring, summer, autumn or winter, no matter what the weather was, Parker would come to her side to accompany her. As Parker's mood continued to decline, Spider-Man also disappeared in New York and no longer appeared because every time he put on that outfit, he would regret why he couldn't save her. For countless days and nights, he thought about how to save Gwen day and night, and he swore that he would never make mistakes again from now on. Peter Parker. I don't know how sad he will be. Pepper's eyes were red as she watched Parker appear in front of Gwen's grave every day and stand there quietly. She felt very uncomfortable just by putting herself in his shoes. Alas, God is playing tricks on me. Tony also felt a little sad for such an infatuated person and was also very annoyed with Harry. Spider-Man had to involve Gwen in his affairs. After leaving Maximum's house, Gwen, Parker and Harry parted ways and they found a quiet place to stay together quietly. Gwen looked at Parker's sad appearance in the sky, hugged his waist tightly, and Parker also hugged her tightly, and the two hugged each other. We won't be separated. I won't die. I will stay with you forever, Peter. Gwen looked up at Parker and said affectionately, yeah. We won't experience life and death. We will be together forever. Parker replied, and then kissed Gwen. Under the moonlight, the two sat on the top of the high-rise building, overlooking the lights of New York below, which looked extremely beautiful. Poor Peter, Otto sighed, and Rose couldn't help crying beside him. Seeing that she was also very sad, Otto handed her a tissue. Fortunately, Gwen here is protected by Venom, otherwise she might die like the second generation Gwen, Otto said with some relief. The Eddie incident shocked the whole world at the time. The mayor of New York personally came to care about Gwen and Harry's situation. There is also Marco. He has been discharged from the hospital recently. I heard from Toby Spider that he has become Harry's full-time driver. He is deeply trusted by Harry and has eaten with them. It's a bit funny to think about it now. Spider-Man and several of his enemies are having a happy dinner together, including Venom. It can be said that all the big villains, except the Green Goblin, are here. Thinking of this, Otto plans to invite Toby Spider to have dinner with Harry and others. Since the incident of Dr. Octopus, Otto and Toby Spider have a very good relationship. Parker often visits to ask for knowledge, and later he brings Gwen with him. Otto also teaches him everything he knows without any reservations, including Dr. Connors and others who answer all questions from Toby Spider. Thanks to their dedication, Toby Spider's knowledge has made great progress recently, and the first generation Gwen has also learned a lot of knowledge that cannot be learned from textbooks. Otto told Rose about this idea and immediately got her consent. Rose immediately started thinking about what meal to prepare for Parker and others tomorrow. Otto also started calling to invite them, and Toby Spider and others readily agreed and promised that they would be on time for the appointment. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190. Ravencroft Mental Hospital. A man dressed in black and wearing a hat, led by a staff member, entered. As the staff member operated, the steel door was opened, and inside was the imprisoned Harry Osborn. "Get out," the gentleman said to the staff member behind him, and the other party obediently went out and closed the door. Harry looked at his reflection in the mirror and said, "You finally made some progress." It can be seen that the scars on his face have almost disappeared, and it seems that the sequelae of spider toxin have been alleviated a lot. Gustav Firth's whole body was hidden in the darkness, and even his face could not be seen, only darkness. I screened a few good candidates. Now that Spider-Man is gone, this city will be different. That's exactly what I expected. Harry raised his eyebrows and said, "Speaking of progress, you look much better." He looked at Harry's face and said, "It's good and bad. Keep talking." Harry did not comment. "How many did you choose?" Firth asked. "I don't want too many people. Everything you need is in Osborn Industries." Harry showed a wicked smile, and he gave Firth the authority of Osborn Industries. Who is the first volunteer? Harry asked. Alexei Sisovich. Life imprisonment. Still serving his sentence. He is the one who wants to join the most. Hearing the gentleman's words, Harry said with satisfaction, "Good. Start with him." The gentleman got the authority to enter Osborne Industries as he wished and immediately went to Osborne Industries. Allowed to enter. "Welcome, Mr. Firth." As the computer AI automatically broadcast to him, Gustav Firth's identity finally revealed a clue. Gustav Firth walked into the special project room of Osborne Industries, which was also the place where spider venom was stored before. As he walked, he could see a lot of things stored in the room beside him, such as Dr. Octopus's mechanical tentacles, vulture's wings, a rhino armor, and so on. Furs. Dr. Karnas frowned and thought. He seemed to have heard of this name. After thinking carefully for a while, he finally remembered it. He immediately called Parker and told him some relevant information about Gustav Firth. Harry also thought of who this person was. Harry had met Firth before, but he didn't know it was him before. Gustav Firth's face changed slightly because he had guessed that there was a high probability that someone would recognize him. After all, the word Firth could reveal too much information. Even if others didn't know, Harry must be very clear about his identity, so he had to move quickly. As long as there was not enough evidence, even if Peter Parker was Spider-Man, he couldn't do anything to him. Parker first received a call from Connors, and then from Harry. For Harry, Firth was not as important as his relationship with Parker, not to mention that the two had only met and were not close. So Harry revealed all the information he knew to Parker, but because of Cheyenne Moo's cold water, Gustav Firth was not as crazy as in the original book, so few people knew his identity for a while. But this was only temporary. If he showed his chicken feet, it would be difficult to escape the human flesh search of Spider-Man fans. After all, there were actually very few target people, and he would be exposed in a few days. George also began to use his identity to retrieve relevant information about many citizens named Firth in New York. At the same time, the FBI immediately took action. Although McCann admitted that he hired Legitrator to kill, the director of the FBI New York branch did not agree that McCann alone could obtain their secret operations and arrange this assassination. Because of the death of Legitrator, they were under tremendous pressure. If he was not in the same camp as the president and someone protected him, he might have been directly dismissed, and how could he keep his position as director? So they also pointed the finger at the mysterious figure of Fields. It was difficult to track down without clues before, but now it is much easier. The FBI does not need evidence like the police. The FBI New York branch directly sent people to Fields' company to arrest people, but they came up empty-handed. So the FBI immediately increased the management of entry and exit in New York, vowing to find the mastermind behind the scenes. Russian gangster Alexei Sisovich, with the help of a group of unidentified people, escaped from the secret prison called the Vault a few days ago. The TV was broadcasting, and a little boy was watching Alexa. His head was displayed on the screen. He was George, the bullied boy. Since Spider-Man disappeared 5 months ago, crime cases have been rising. This is another example. Spider-Man's disappearance has left a huge hidden danger to the city. Listening to the host talking about Spider-Man's disappearance on TV, George, a little boy, came to the window with a depressed look and stuck his head out to see Spider-Man wandering around the city. But he saw nothing. He turned his head and looked at the macro wind turbine. Spider-Man had helped him before. Believe it or not, even the New York Police Department has joined the chorus of citizens. Everyone is asking the same question: where is Spider-Man? While Aunt May was packing up, she looked at Parker on the side. Parker reached out and turned off the TV. After a few months, Parker's mood was still low. It's such a pity for Spider-Man. It's such a pity that he just disappeared like this. It seems that people really need him. Aunt May put all the relics of Uncle Ben in the box and turned to Parker. Parker didn't want to hear about Spider-Man. Every time he thought of what happened that night, his heart was broken. He picked up the bowl and stood up to leave. Aunt May asked hurriedly, "Where are you going?" "Eat cereal." Parker replied calmly. "Peter, where are you going?" Aunt May knew that Parker was still immersed in the sadness and loss of Gwen's death and looked at him worriedly. Parker stood there, silent for a long time, then turned around and looked at Aunt May. I don't know. It's interesting. I tried to clean up here, organize it, and put some of Ben's things in the box. Aunt May turned around and picked up the box, smiled at Parker and said, "This is the interesting part. The heavier the box, the lighter I feel." But it was obvious that Parker didn't understand what Aunt May meant and asked, "Are you going to throw those away?" "No. God. Of course not. I can't do that. This is part of my life. I just found a better place." Aunt May looked at Parker with red eyes, reminding him to look forward, not to keep looking behind. No matter how much he missed her, she would never come back. "I'll take a last look and put them where they should be." Parker looked at Aunt May thoughtfully, thinking about what she said. Chapter 191. Has it been 5 months? It seems that he hasn't gotten over it at all. I hope Aunt May can enlighten him. The first generation Uncle Ben sighed. Poor Peter. I really can't imagine what kind of pain that would be. The first generation Aunt May wiped her tears silently beside her, looking at Garfield Spider, as if she was looking at her own Toby Spider. Toby Spider and the first generation Gwen snuggled up to each other. "Fortunately you are by my side. I can't imagine how painful it would be if I lost you. I won't leave you, Peter. I have Venom to protect me. Nothing will happen." The first generation Gwen said with a smile. Venom jumped up from her clothes and ran to the shoulders of the two. Toby Spider glanced at Venom, who was dancing with his hands and feet. It blocked him from looking at Gwen. Feeling that Toby Spider's eyes were not right, Venom immediately shrank back from his heart to Gwen's clothes. Parker returned to his room, picked up Gwen's photo, and looked at it. He saw a USB drive underneath. He picked it up. This was a replay of Gwen's graduation ceremony. He plugged it into his laptop and watched Gwen's graduation speech. Gwen invited him to dinner and wanted to tell him about her graduation speech that night, but he was entangled in George's last words and didn't watch it. This eventually led to Gwen breaking up with him. After that, he didn't have the chance to listen to Gwen's story about the graduation ceremony until he saw the USB drive. On a beautiful day like this, it's easy to feel hopeful. But there are dark days in life, and those days you feel lonely, and that's when you need hope the most. Parker silently looked at Gwen's face on the screen, and couldn't help but recall the past, as if everything was still vivid in his mind. No matter how deep the hope is buried, no matter how lost you feel, you must promise me that you will not give up hope. Hold on. We must be stronger than everything we have experienced. My wish for you is to be people's hope. People need hope, even in the face of failure. What can help people survive better than hope? While listening to Gwen's speech, Parker closed his eyes, listening to her encouragement to everyone, as if to encourage him. With a smile on his lips, he began to pack up Gwen's belongings, putting things into boxes like Aunt May, as well as Richard Parker and his family photos, briefcases, etc. Finally, he placed a close photo of himself and Gwen on the table. Today, we are gathered here with those who have influenced us. I know it sounds like saying goodbye again, but we will carry each other's hopes and enter the next stage of life. This will remind us who we are and remind us who we want to be. The 4 years with you are unforgettable. I will miss you all very much. Parker opened the closet, looked at the long dusted Spider-Man suit inside, and slowly walked forward. Well said, Gwen. It's great no matter how many times you watch it. Really? George looked at Gwen with great satisfaction, although he had already watched the playback of the graduation ceremony. But Parker watched it when he was at his lowest point. Her speech gave Parker the motivation to continue living. This feeling was completely different from before. The mood was different, and the feeling of watching it was also different. As if it was destined. Although Gwen died, Parker would still carry her hope and move forward. And the ghost Spider-Man mentioned by the narration before also carried Peter Parker's hope and continued to move forward after his death. Dad. Gwen looked at George's eyes and lowered her head a little shyly. Parker held her hand tightly. George looked at Parker without saying anything. The communication between the two men was very simple. With just one look, Parker firmly revealed his idea of protecting Gwen. On the street, New York citizens were leisurely eating meals and reading newspapers. Suddenly, someone on the side of the road ran over in panic attracting their attention. Everyone turned their heads to look in the direction they came from. Even the employees in the store stuck their heads out and watched curiously. I saw a huge battle armor coming out of the bank. The reinforced concrete wall was hit with a big hole. Behind him, there were green US dollars scattered all over the floor. Parker sat on the bed in the room, holding the spider hood and watching quietly, thinking about Uncle Ben and Gwen's words. His eyes gradually became firm. In the city, Alexei casually threw a car to the side of the road, causing panic among passers-by. He controlled the huge rhino armor and walked on the street, and each step could crush the ground, and in front of him were people who were panicking. New York police were trying to get citizens to evacuate this dangerous area. Let's go. Hurry up. Many vehicles were overturned. Alexei was running rampant in the city. The police fired at him, but they couldn't hurt his armor at all. Instead, Alexei controlled the machine gun of the rhino armor and fired wildly at the police in front of him. A large number of bullets directly turned the police car into a hornet's nest. The police had to lie down and find cover to avoid bullets. The police car began to catch fire after being attacked by a large number of bullets. A helicopter hovered over the battle site, and the host reported, "I'm at the intersection of Park Avenue and 56th Street. The scene is in chaos. Someone is wearing some kind of weapons and armor. A terrorist attack was launched in the city." The battle between the police and the gangsters attracted countless curious passers-by, including the little boy George and his mother. He looked forward to Spider-Man appearing to stop the other party. Alexei Sisovich opened the hood covering his head and laughed at the police in front of him. "I'm Rhino. I told you. I will be back." Alexei Sisovich hid in a small town in Mexico, looking at the Spider-Man fans who surrounded him with a bitter face and cursed Cheyenne Moo in his heart for exposing him again. Since his previous attempt to rob plutonium was exposed, he avoided the pursuit of the US police and fled to Mexico, but his two accomplices were not so lucky and were unfortunately caught. Alexei didn't expect that he would be put on the screen again not long after he fled to Mexico. "Are you the Rhino?" A tall and burly black Mexican man in the lead taunted Alexei after taking a look at the screen, and his words caused laughter from many Mexicans behind him. Looking at the Mexican men who surrounded him, he roared and wrestled with them. Chapter 192. Of course, the police would not let Alexei go. They immediately stood up and continued to shoot at him. Alexei immediately dropped his skull cap. He just wanted to show off, not to die. He continued to output with powerful firepower. Many police officers were suppressed by him and could not move, let alone fight back. The little boy George looked at this scene, suddenly squatted down, and crawled through the gap at the bottom of the railing. When his mother found out, she immediately shouted, "Child, no, no." She wanted to climb over the railing in a hurry, but was stopped by a policeman. Another policeman hurriedly chased after her. He trotted all the way to the middle of the police and Alexei. The leading police officer spotted him and immediately shouted to the other police officers, "Cease fire. Everyone, cease fire." The little boy ran to the middle of the road, and the others also noticed his sudden appearance. The commander on the scene immediately ordered, "Team 2, lift the alert, lift the alert. There are civilians within the shooting range." Alexei Savich also spotted the little boy, stopped attacking, showed his head, and looked at the little boy. The little boy was wearing a clothes imitating a spider suit and holding a replica spider hood in his hand. A policeman wanted to rush up and bring him back. "Child, you must." But as soon as he showed his head, he was suppressed by Alexei's firepower, and then he shot at the police again. "Look, New York. Spider-Man is back again." He looked at the little boy and teased the people around him. "Let that child go. That's my child. Please." His mother was about to collapse, and two policemen stopped her from doing irrational things. Although the little boy was a little scared, he still plucked up the courage to put the hood on his head. Alexei nodded repeatedly at his actions and asked, "Brave boy, right? Did Alexei scare you, little guy?" He didn't reply, but just stood there silently with his fists clenched and looked at him. Alexei controlled the rhino armor and walked towards him step by step. At this time, the citizens watching seemed to have discovered something, and they all looked up, and even the police showed surprise. His eyes turned slowly, and there was a slight sound of spider silk launchers in his ears. Alex's original smug smile disappeared in the distance, and he stood there looking at the uninvited guest behind the little boy. "Hey, Spider-Man." He turned around when he heard the voice and found Parker standing behind him looking at him. He was surprised to lift the mask and look at Parker. "I knew you would come back." He was very happy to see his idol appear again. "That's right. Thank you for standing up for me. You are the bravest child I have ever seen. I will deal with this pile of garbage. You go find your mother, okay?" Parker squatted down and looked at him, bumped fists with him and said, "Okay. Get out of here. Geo. Geo." He patted his shoulder, and the little boy immediately ran back to find his mother. A policeman quickly picked him up and sent him to his mother. His mother held him and looked at Parker with lingering fear. Everyone at the scene began to applaud Spider-Man's return and cheered loudly. Parker jumped into the police car and a policeman handed him a big speaker. "You duel with me? You duel with me now?" Alexei looked at Spider-Man in the distance. New and old hatred surged in his heart, and he mocked him. Parker stood on the roof of the car and used the horn to say to Alexei, "On behalf of the good citizens of New York City and the real rhinos on the earth, I now ask you to raise your claws and surrender. Never. I will crush you, kill you, destroy you." Hearing Parker's words, he immediately roared and controlled the rhino armor to slam the ground hard. "Do you want me to go down and let you kill me?" Parker teased. "Yes." Alexei immediately waved at him and responded, "I'm coming." "Ah. There's no better feeling than going home," Parker muttered to himself while throwing the horn in his hand back to the police officers behind him. Alexei knew that he couldn't be careless when facing Spider-Man, so he armed himself fully and covered his head with the rhino horns that he had not installed before. He started to charge at Parker with big strides, like a real rhino charging at him, while also launching a shoot out several missiles. Parker did a front flip and picked up the manhole cover and hit the missile, causing an explosion, but he was not hurt at all, and he jumped into the air. He used spider silk to pull the manhole cover in midair to hit the remaining 2 missiles, and then smashed it at Alexei. After the picture of the sky screen froze, Tony frowned and said, "Is it over? Is there no follow-up? How is Alexei?" Rod spread his hands to indicate that "You don't ask me, I don't know either." Seeing that the sky screen did not respond to his plan, Tony had to suppress his inner restlessness and wait patiently. Unfortunately, he didn't know that the story of the Amazing Spider-Man ended here. Tony replayed Alex's rhino armor and the equipment in the rooms of fields in the special project. He also saw something very familiar. Banner. "Look, this should be Dr. Otto's octopus tentacle, and the wing next to it." Tony called Banner over, and Rhodes also came over to join in the fun. After taking a look, Dr. Banner confirmed, "Yeah, it's the equipment that Otto used before. I wonder if there will be an Otto in their universe. Maybe. But this should be a headache for the second generation Peter Parker." Tony disassembled the rhino armor simulated in the holographic projection and looked at it. It looks so-so, just like that. After taking a few glances, Tony shrugged and said that it was just so-so. This technology is the same as the Iron Man armor he made at the beginning. "Hey, not everyone can be like you, Tony." Seeing Tony start to be venomous, Banner couldn't help but complain. Tony also said narcissistically, "Yeah, not everyone is me, the great savior, Tony Stark." Rhodes rolled his eyes. Here it comes again. After a hard fight, Alexei was finally thrown to the door of the local police station by the Mexican men. After receiving the news, the Mexican government immediately prepared to deport him back to the United States. The mother of the little boy George severely criticized him and warned him not to do such dangerous things in the future, otherwise he would be punished by the family law. Chapter 193. As the broadcast of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 ended, Parker, who had not taken any action, also began to take action to find Gustav Firth, the Black Hand behind the scenes. Although the company is still in a turbulent period, Harry still chooses to help Parker investigate the possible secret base of the Gentleman and find his relationship with McCann through the intelligent AI of Osborn Industries. After seeing Gustav Firth half exposed in the sky, McCann also gave up the last glimmer of hope. He originally hoped that the other party could rescue him. After all, the two sides were still in a cooperative relationship. Unexpectedly, the gentleman himself could not protect himself. This time McCann felt that he had no hope at all, so he decisively sold the gentleman and revealed all the information he knew to the FBI in exchange for better treatment. At the same time, it can be regarded as avoiding physical suffering, because the FBI personnel have not caught the gentleman for several days, and they have begun to be a little impatient. The outside world is quite curious about Firth, and requires him to be found and arrested as soon as possible. If this evil careerist stays outside for a day, they will have to worry for a day. Under pressure from public opinion, McCann felt that if he didn't speak up, the FBI would probably punish him. Originally, this kind of thing was impossible according to McCann's identity, but the FBI hated him because of the legislator incident. If it weren't for some public opinion and the fear that opponents would slander them as confessing under torture, McCann wouldn't be alive. And well, until now, the identity of the gentleman was completely exposed with McCann's surrender. When the FBI staff announced it through George's mouth, the gentleman's company Oscorp was besieged. Because he was missing, the police directly identified him as a fugitive for fear of crime, and found many illegal experiments and research in his company. For a time, the situation of the entire company took a sharp turn for the worse. The stock price fell to the limit for many consecutive times, and the employees were also in a panic, because from time to time, some staff were taken away by the FBI for investigation. At the same time, Alexis Savage was also deported to the United States by the Mexican government, received by the FBI, and directly sent to another secret prison for direct detention. Considering his danger, this prison is not far from New York, so even if he escapes again, the spider couple can quickly catch him. At the same time, many citizens are worried that the terrible equipment and weapons in Osborne Industries will be used by ambitious people like Fields. Harry also stood up and said that he would increase the security measures for special projects and never let them be taken away by villains. Parker and Gwen also came out to vouch for Harry. Out of trust in Spider-Man, the public opinion heat lasted for more than half a month and then slowly decreased. Fields was finally caught in a secret place in New York after more than 10 days of absconding. Because he did not have superpowers, he could only choose to surrender when facing the guns of FBI personnel. His ambition was shattered before it even started. I don't know if he will regret why he is so greedy. After arresting Fields, the biggest behind-the-scenes mastermind, the director of the FBI New York branch finally held a press conference in person to respond to the murder of legislator and the two extremely evil people behind the scenes, McCann and Fields. After meeting McCann, Parker also learned about the whole story of his parents. Unfortunately, the dead are gone, and his parents will never come back. Let Richard Parker and Mary Parker be together. When everything was settled, 3 months had passed, and the sky curtain opened again. Hello everyone. We have seen the stories of the first and second generations of Peter Parker before. Now let's take a look at the story of the third generation of Spider-Man. But to understand the third generation, we must first know some other people. The voice of the narrator sounded. Is it the third generation directly? The story of the second generation is over? What about the mysterious Black Hand? What about the ending of Alexis Savage and Harry? Tony frowned and looked at the sky curtain in confusion. What's the situation? Toby Spider and Garfield Spider also looked at the sky curtain in confusion, hoping to get an explanation. Hey, what's going on? The story of the second generation hasn't ended yet. Why is the third generation being played? And who are the others? Tony shouted loudly to the sky screen, but the sky screen ignored the doubts of the crowd and said to himself, as we all know, the first generation Spider Spirit, the second generation Spider-Man, the third generation Father, Iron Man. P.S. As usual, Toby Spider and Garfield Spider are distinguished. Unlike the first and second generations, the abilities of the third generation Spider-Man are relatively balanced point, but compared to the other two generations, he is more outstanding in scientific research ability. Relying on the technological inheritance from Tony Stark, he still has super combat ability, even if he does not fully develop his abilities. It's just that he knows too many talented people, which makes him not think of solving problems by himself when he encounters difficulties, but seek help. He relies too much on others and cannot exert his due abilities. Even the spider sense is sometimes not there. Tony. Is this Iron Man the Iron Man I know? Me. Tony spread his hands and looked at Cheyenne-Moo in disbelief. Nick Fury stared at Cheyenne-Moo with wide eyes and immediately chose to call Tony. How could he not know that Tony had a son? Tony was also confused when he received the call. Could it be that he had an illegitimate child? Impossible. Although he was indeed very romantic in the past, he was also very sure that he would not have an illegitimate child or something like that. But now he began to doubt that Cheyenne-Moo would not make a false statement. If he said it was, it must be true. There was no need for him to lie to himself on this point. Pepper, listen to my explanation. I really didn't know I had a son. Tony saw Pepper turned away with a cold face, so he hung up the phone and hurriedly chased after her to explain. But now Pepper suddenly knew that Tony would have a son who was Spider-Man, and it was very likely that he would not be born by himself. Her anger value was directly maximum doubt, and she became Pepper. Tony held Pepper's hand tightly and did not let her leave the villa. After much persuasion, she calmed down her anger a little and did not break up with Tony directly. Iron Man? That Tony Stark? The one who is comparable to God's immortal body? For a moment, many people watching the sky were a little incredible. According to the situation of the first two Spider-Men, the third generation should also be called Peter Parker. Why is his father Tony Stark? This is unreasonable. Why doesn't he have the surname Stark? Or is he adopted? Chapter 194. Aunt May in the main universe of the MCU changed her expression. She knew very well that her little nephew was most likely the future Spider-Man, but he was only 10 years old now, and he was still several years away from becoming Spider-Man in the sky. If Sky suddenly exposed him now, how could she protect little Peter Parker? And she didn't quite understand why the father of the third generation of Spider-Man was Iron Man. She knew very well that Peter Parker would not be Tony Stark's son. As a former agent, Aunt May certainly knew the deeds of Iron Man Tony Stark. Could it be that she would be favored by Tony Stark in the future? This is unreasonable. Could it be that she would really be favored by Tony Stark in the future? And would he adopt little Peter Parker as his adopted son? Or become his godfather? Aunt May was confused and upset for a while. Tony Stark and Spider-Man Peter Parker have had an unbreakable bond for a long time. The first time he saw Spider-Man was at the Stark Expo. As the Sky Curtain finished speaking, a little boy wearing a mask imitating Iron Man and a toy palm cannon appeared on the Sky Curtain. An Iron Soldier landed, tested it and pointed the weapon at him. Then Tony, wearing the Mark armor, fell from the sky and landed beside him. He aimed the palm cannon at the Iron Soldier and then destroyed it with one blow. Good job, little friend. Tony praised him and immediately flew away, leaving little Peter Parker quietly watching his back. Wow, that little boy's Peter Parker. My son? Tony shouted in disbelief. Pepper took a deep breath several times after looking at his excited look. Aunt May, that's me. Little Peter Parker pointed at himself on the Sky Curtain and shouted repeatedly. Being in close contact with Iron Man was his most exciting time. Yeah. Big trouble. Aunt May muttered to herself as she looked at Cheyenne-Moo. As a former agent, her instinct told her that this matter would bring them trouble. Jarvis, help me find this child. Tony shouted and realized that Pepper was next to him, so he immediately calmed down and said to Jarvis. At the same time, countless people began to investigate the future Spider-Man. Nick Fury reacted the fastest because he had already collected all the relevant information. When the age of the little boy came out, Egghead knew who he was, but he hesitated for a while and chose to inform Tony Stark. Although he wanted to control the little spider, Cheyenne-Moo said that his father was Tony, so Egghead had to take Tony's thoughts into consideration and let them recognize each other, although they must not have a blood relationship. Egghead had already investigated Peter Parker, his parents and family, and even the record of which hospital Mary Parker gave birth to him was clear. Tony asked Jarvis to find relevant information, and then the information about the fuck man came to him, so he immediately put on his armor and set off for Queens. The first time Tony saw the grown-up Spider-Man was when the disagreement within the Avengers was about to break out. He needed manpower, so he set his sights on the Spider-Man who had become Spider-Man and was a friendly neighbor in New York. A man with a bag on his back and a laptop in his hand walked out of the elevator. He took out the key from his trouser pocket and opened the door. After entering the house, he did not notice that there was an outsider in the house. He lowered his head and shouted, "Hello, Aunt May." Then he walked aside and put the bag and laptop on the table. "Did school go well today?" Aunt May asked with concern. He walked around and said, "Not bad. There is a luxury car parked outside." Before he finished speaking, he widened his eyes and saw a person who surprised him sitting on the sofa. Tony Stark was sitting there in front of Aunt May, who still had her charm, holding a half-eaten cookie in his hand. "Oh, Mr. Parker." Tony turned around and smiled at Spider-Man. "Ah." Spider-Man took off the earphones from his ears, pointed at Tony's shocked and surprised expression and said, "What? Why are you here?" Spider-Man was a little overwhelmed when he suddenly saw his idol. "Hey. I'm Peter." He stuttered as he introduced himself. "I'm Tony." Tony looked at him calmly. You're here. What are you doing here?" Spider-Man didn't understand why Tony suddenly came to his house. "We should meet. Did you receive my email?" Tony still had a bruise on his right eye socket, which was caused by Bucky's beating. Spider-Man didn't know what Tony was going to do, but he still subconsciously answered his question. "Did you receive it?" "Yeah. Received. About." It was obvious that he had no idea about the so-called fund, and this was just an excuse for Tony to find him. But Aunt May didn't know, so she looked at Spider-Man and said, "You didn't tell me about the fund." "The fund?" Spider-Man was just worrying about what to say. Tony took the initiative to take over the conversation. "September fund." Spider-Man had a way out and nodded quickly. "Right. Do you remember that you applied? I approved it. So, this is done." Tony picked up the cup and took a sip. Aunt May was a little surprised that she didn't know anything about this, so she questioned Spider-Man. "You didn't tell me. What's going on? Are you hiding something from me?" I know you like surprises, so I want to tell you later. Anyway, what did I apply for?" Spider-Man still doesn't understand why Tony suddenly came to his house, and he doesn't remember applying for any fund. "This is what I'm here to solve." Tony said lightly. "Okay. Solve? Okay." Spider-Man looked at Tony with a puzzled look on his face. "She's actually an aunt. It's unbelievable." Tony praised Aunt May to Spider-Man. "Yeah. There are all kinds of aunts." Aunt May said modestly, a little embarrassed, "This walnut and red date biscuit is so delicious." Tony praised Aunt May desperately, even though the biscuit was terrible. "Can you stop for a while?" Spider-Man had enough of Tony's mindless flattery of Aunt May and stopped him. "What's wrong?" Tony turned his head and glanced at him. "Is this fund related to money?" Spider-Man looked at Tony in confusion. "Yeah. The funds are very sufficient. Don't you see who you are talking to? Can I talk to him for 5 minutes?" Hearing Tony's words, Spider-Man couldn't help but exclaimed wow, and then Tony planned to talk to him privately. "Please," Aunt May said. "Of course." Chapter 195. "Oh, that's terrible." Aunt May sighed. "Now it's good. She's completely exposed. Tony Stark has come to her door. What's going on?" Although Tony squinted his eyes and looked at the sky while flying at high speed, he was confused. It's obvious that he has no blood relationship with Peter Parker, so why did the third generation call my father Iron Man? And what's the matter with the wound on his face? What's going on with the internal disagreement of the Avengers? What Tony thought of, Egghead also thought of. He squinted his eyes and thought carefully about the meaning of the sentence in the sky. Will the Avengers split in the future? There were too many thoughts at once, and all kinds of possible situations came into the mind of the damn fuck man, so that he couldn't analyze what was going on for a while. Toby Spider and Garfield Spider looked at this extremely young little spider. He was even younger than when they first appeared. When Toby Spider became Spider-Man, he was about to graduate from high school. Garfield also graduated from school after a while, but the little spider could tell from Aunt May's words that he had just started a new school. He was obviously much younger than them. Neighbors began to knock on Aunt May's door, and they all recognized this single woman with a baby. At the same time, many people began to speculate what kind of mysterious organization the Avengers was. The two came to Spider-Man's room. Tony locked the door casually and then walked to the trash can beside him and spit out the biscuits in his mouth. As a walnut and red date biscuit, this tastes pretty good, Tony said lightly, causing Spider-Man to look at him strangely. Tony then looked at the computer and equipment in Spider-Man's room and said disdainfully, "What is this? Retro technology? Second-hand store? Savior army?" Spider-Man replied, "I picked up garbage. Are you a garbage truck driver?" Tony's mouth was still so poisonous. "Yeah, I am. Whatever, that. I definitely have never applied for your fund." Spider-Man looked at Tony straight to the point. Tony interrupted him, "Let me speak first. Okay, I have a rhetorical question for you. Is this you?" Tony took out his mobile phone and projected a video. It was a car thief who was about to steal a car, but was knocked to the ground by a person wearing red and blue pajamas flying by with a spider silk. Spider-Man would of course not admit it. He denied it without hesitation. No. You. What do you mean?" His secret was discovered. He looked at Tony a little nervously. "It's you. Look at your movements." Tony turned his mobile phone horizontally and projected another video, only to see a speeding car crashing into a bus. Spider-Man landed in front of the bus and caught the car directly, and he left there unscathed. Tony praised, "Wow. Great catch. 40 miles per hour, 3,000 pounds of car. This is not easy. You are amazing. This is all from YouTube, right? You found it there. These are all fake, computer special effects. Just like that video. What is it?" Spider-Man pretended that he knew nothing and walked to his computer. He didn't want Tony to see his expression. He wanted to fool Tony with the special effects video, but Tony had already confirmed his identity and naturally didn't believe it. Yeah. Just like the UFO over Phoenix, right? Tony said casually. Then he set his eyes on the ceiling, and then he saw the baffle on the ceiling. He picked up a stick and poked the baffle, and immediately a piece of clothing fell from it. Spider-Man thought he could get away with it, but he didn't expect Tony to directly expose him. "What is this?" Tony smiled. "No." The next second, Spider-Man rushed over and took away his homemade tights and hid them in the closet. He turned around and looked at the ceiling. In an instant, he didn't know how many brain cells died, and he didn't know how to come back. He knew he couldn't hide it anymore. "So, you are Spider-Man. Crime-fighting spider? Spider-Boy?" Tony walked up to him and asked. He was not sure what Spider-Man's name was. "Spider-Man." Spider-Man answered with his hands on his chest. "Just wearing this one-piece pajamas and still called a hero?" Tony complained about Spider-Man's battlesuit. "This is not a one-piece pajamas." Spider-Man walked from the closet to his chest with his hands on his chest point, sitting down at the computer desk. Tony took the pajamas he had hidden in the closet and checked them. "Unbelievable. I actually had a pretty good day today, Mr. Stark. I didn't miss the subway, and I picked up a good quality DVD player effortless. I also easily passed the algebra test." The subtext is that if Tony hadn't come, he would have had a very lucky day today. Tony understood what he said, but he didn't care what Spider-Man thought. Who else knows? Does anyone know? Tony looked at Spider-Man and asked. Hearing this, he shook his head. "No one. Don't even your extremely charming aunt know?" Tony sat down with his pajamas and asked again. No. I don't know. If she knows, she'll go crazy. If she goes crazy, I'll panic." Spider-Man explained to Tony. "You know what I think is amazing? This web," Tony said, holding the spider silk launcher he found on his pajamas, and then threw it to Spider-Man. He caught the launcher without looking back. Tony praised him and looked at him curiously. "The tensile strength is super high. Who made it?" "Me," Spider-Man said as he threw the launcher into the closet. "Oh. It looks like he has to rely on the spider silk launcher like the second generation. It seems that I'm really special." Toby Spider said, after watching Tony pick up the launcher on his clothes. Yeah. And it seems that he is different from you. He has someone to rely on. And he has strong scientific research ability. The first generation Gwen looked at Toby Spider. If Toby Spider's dream was not to be a photographer, then he might also be an excellent scientist. But now it's not bad. Although Toby Spider still often takes pictures of Spider-Man and posts them on the internet, now he is more often studying and researching with Otto and Dr. Connors. In addition to fighting criminals at night, he will also go to more dangerous places when he is needed, such as fire sites. If he is on the scene, New York firefighters will respect him as a guide, because with Toby Spider, their casualty rate has been greatly reduced. Dr. Otto and the elite teachers in the school all praised him, and among the 3 generations of Spider-Man, the second generation Garfield Spider should have the worst scientific research ability. He was not focused enough in class, so he even forgot some basic knowledge, and Gwen needed to remind him. Chapter 196. Climbing the wall. How did you do that? Sticky gloves. Tony didn't quite understand how Spider-Man could climb the wall like a spider. It's a long story. Spider-Man was about to explain his superpowers, but was interrupted by Tony. He took the 2 sunglasses on his pajamas and put them on his eyes. He could only see darkness, so he said strangely, "Oh my god. Can I still see with this thing on? I'm blind." Yes, I can see." Spider-Man snatched the one-piece pajamas from Tony's hand and threw it into the closet, and added, "I can see. Okay. It's just, after that happened, my senses became super sensitive. I received too much information. So, wearing that can help me concentrate." Spider-Man explained to Tony why he wore it, and then sat back on his bed. "You urgently need to upgrade your equipment. From head to toe, a systematic upgrade. All refurbished. That's why I came." Tony also explained to Spider-Man one of the reasons why he came. Then he asked, "Why do you want to do this?" "I have to ask, what is your motivation? What motivates you to get up in the morning?" "Because." Spider-Man looked at his hands and hesitated. "Because I have always been an ordinary person in my life. I got these abilities 6 months ago. I read books, built computers. Also, I really want to play football, but I couldn't play before, so I can't go now." Spider-Man knew that he was different from ordinary people. If he went to play football, he would definitely not be able to hide it, so he couldn't go. Tony also nodded. "Yes. Because you have changed." "Exactly. But I can't tell anyone, so I didn't say it." At this point, Spider-Man swallowed his saliva and looked at Tony and said solemnly, "Look, if you have this ability, but don't do anything, then the bad things that happen later, it's your responsibility." Listening to Spider-Man's words, Tony couldn't help but lean forward to listen to him carefully. Spider-Man's words almost touched Tony's heart. Spider-Man is so capable and responsible, with compassion and empathy, getting up early and going to bed late every day to help others. What a rare quality this is. Although Tony is very satisfied with him, he can't make a decision so hastily, so he asked, "So you want to help the little people? You want to do your part? Make the world a better place or something, right?" Yeah. Just help the little people. That's it." Spider-Man answered without hesitation. Tony couldn't help but stand up, walk to Spider-Man, and said to him, "I'm going to sit here, so move your legs." Spider-Man sat down obediently. Tony sat next to him, patted his shoulder, and suddenly asked, "Do you have a passport?" No. I don't even have a driver's license." Spider-Man replied after a moment of stunned silence. "Have you been to Germany?" Spider-Man shook his head after hearing this. "Oh, you'll like it there." Tony smiled at him. "I can't go to Germany." Spider-Man suddenly realized something and shouted at him, "Why?" Tony looked at him a little puzzled. "I still have homework." Spider-Man replied hesitantly, "Okay, I'll pretend you didn't say that." Tony blinked and got up from beside him. "No. I'm serious. I can't drop out of school." Spider-Man shouted at Tony with his eyes wide open. Tony walked to the door on his own, saying, "It might be a little dangerous. You'd better tell Aunt Pretty that I'm taking you out." He put his hand on the door handle, and Spider-Man stood up suddenly and used the spider web shooter to stick Tony's hand to the door, but he didn't notice that Tony had locked the door before, so it couldn't be opened at all. Don't tell Aunt May. Spider-Man looked at Tony seriously. Okay, Spider-Man. Tony knew that Spider-Man had compromised. After the two looked at each other for a few seconds, Tony complained, "Untie it for me." Spider-Man only reacted at this time and walked forward. "Sorry, I'll do it right away." Maximum looked at Spider-Man's speech. Although his voice was not loud, it was deafening. He couldn't help but think of what happened in the sky. Spider-Man didn't get people's attention because he had superpowers. People naturally side with those who are friendly to them. Regardless of whether Toby Spider has superpowers or not, he still dares to go to the fire scene to save people. As long as you are willing to help others, you will definitely gain the favor of others. That is what he didn't understand in the sky. Spider-Man is more popular than him because he helps others, while that self did nothing. The most important thing is that heart that dedicates itself to others, which has won him the applause of countless people. He is so conscious at such a young age. Unlike our Peter, who is about to graduate from high school, but still disobeys and stays out in the middle of the night. Uncle Ben, the second generation, said to Aunt May, and Aunt May nodded in agreement. Garfield Spider couldn't help covering his face on the side. Compared with this, he is really not good. Little Spider just entered high school and already knows to help others. Gwen, the second generation, looked at Garfield Spider's headache happily beside him. This is already a common situation in their family. Soon after, George and Helen came to the door, along with their 3 sons. Uncle Ben hurriedly got up to greet them, followed by Parker and Gwen. "Hi, Ben." George greeted Uncle Ben, nodded to Garfield Spider beside him, and walked in. They were going to have a party today, and Harry and Connors would also come later. The main purpose of today's party was to discuss why the story of Garfield Spider ended like this. Now many people in the world think that it might be because Garfield Spider died in Alex's hands, so there was no follow-up. And Tony also came to the door of Spider-Man and Aunt May's house. At this time, there were many neighbors gathered at her door to watch the fun, and Aunt May closed the door. Seeing Iron Man coming in armor, everyone made way for him. Tony introduced himself at the door. Aunt May inside finally opened the door after knowing that it was Tony. After Tony went in, he locked the door again. Aunt May looked at him a little nervously. Tony looked around and found that the situation was similar to that in the Sky Dome, except that the little spider was still a child, less than 10 years old, but he looked very similar to him in the Sky Dome. "It looks like your situation is not good. Do you need a new house?" Tony unloaded the armor on the spot, touched the head of little Peter Parker, and looked at Aunt May and said, "Maybe, what are you doing here?" Aunt May couldn't figure out Tony's attitude. "What? Didn't the Sky Dome say that I'm his father? What do you say I'm here for?" "Of course, to protect him." Tony squatted down and looked at little Peter Parker. Who would have thought that this child would say such a thing when he grew up? "Leave here first. You are not safe here. Your identities have been exposed, and it will be very dangerous to stay here. Maybe some people don't want another nosy Spider-Man in the world. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197. In the end, Aunt May agreed with Tony. They really wanted to move to a new home. When Tony went out, Natasha had already prepared a car for him downstairs. Natasha had already contacted Aunt May, but Aunt May didn't know her identity. So when she saw Natasha, Aunt May was shocked. She had met Natasha several times a long time ago. She also had a good impression of this beautiful woman. She didn't expect that she was sent to investigate and contact herself. Natasha also noticed Aunt May's eyes and smiled apologetically at her. It was her investigation that made Nick Fury determine that Spider-Man would most likely become Spider-Man. Tony sent Peter Parker and Aunt May to Natasha's car and started to head towards the new home he had just bought, while he followed the car to escort Alexander Pierce knew that Tony was going to pick up Spider-Man alone, but he didn't plan to do it because he still needed Tony to solve the future war. Although he tried his best to promote the Inside Project, he was not sure whether the Inside Project could deal with aliens or even the Ancient One, so many plans could only be delayed again and again. Hydra has been completely silent for a while, without any action, just afraid of being discovered by the Ancient One. Unfortunately, Pierce did not understand the Ancient One after all, and did not know that what he did was useless. After Tony settled Aunt May and Peter Parker, he and Natasha came to S.H.I.E.L.D. to meet Egghead. "It looks like you are very satisfied with him." Egghead looked at Tony and said in the conference room. "Yeah." Tony nodded, then turned around and found that an unexpected person came in. The visitor turned out to be Thor. Since the energy turbulence of the Rainbow Bridge subsided, Thor came to Earth to find Jane Foster. He has been here for a long time, but Tony has been staying at home and didn't know. At the invitation of Nick Fury, Thor also joined the Avengers. Tony and Thor nodded to each other after meeting, and the friendship left on the battlefield was very solid. Although they had only met once, Tony still had a good impression of these future comrades. They must have participated in the future war, right? After Captain America, Barton Banner and Carol, who came from the universe yesterday, sat down, Egghead explained the purpose of gathering them today. That is to discuss why the Avengers had disagreements. It even sounded like a civil war was about to break out. Otherwise Tony would not need manpower, let alone recruit a high school student for no reason. Combined with the scars on Tony's face, he must have had a conflict with others in the Sky Curtain not long ago, but because the Sky Curtain only played a short clip, everyone didn't know the cause and effect. And this is what they want to discuss. What exactly caused the Avengers to split? Who are the people who split? When Tony was about to speak, the voice of the Sky Curtain narration suddenly sounded. If you want to understand the 3 generations of Spider-Man, you must first know who Tony Stark is. You have all heard of him, and I have told you before, but you must not know how he became Iron Man. Tony Stark, he has many labels, such as genius, inventor, billionaire, playboy, Iron Man, etc. But in the earliest days, he was not Iron Man, but the world's largest arms trader. Tony's face changed slightly. The words of the narration on the sky screen reminded him of some bad memories. Those were the darkest days of his life. Thor, who didn't know Tony's past experience, was also a little interested. Others had a general understanding of Tony and knew that it was not a good memory. Toby Spider and Garfield Spider watched with interest. They were also curious about who Tony Stark was. If possible, they would also like to know the stories of Natasha, Banner and Strange. They want to know what kind of war can affect the entire universe, and what kind of thing can cause such a large number of casualties, causing the entire universe to fall into a life and death crisis. A team of military Humvees appeared on the sky, raising a large cloud of dust. Tony Stark was sitting in the car with a glass of wine. He found that the soldier next to him was staring at him, and couldn't help but complain. "You seem to be taking me to a military court. Damn, what did I do? It feels like you will stop the car at any time and kill me. Who doesn't allow you to talk? Hey, speak." Tony looked at the soldier next to him and shouted. The soldier didn't know what to say. Tony looked at him. "Why are you always staring at me?" "No. They are just afraid of you." The female pilot driving the car in the front seat suddenly explained. Tony realized that she was actually a woman at this time, and was surprised. "OMG. You are a woman. I really didn't see it. I'm sorry." The military emphasizes gender equality, right? "I will first treat you as a soldier," she said lightly. "I'm a pilot. To be honest, you have a pretty good figure. I kind of want to see you more. Don't you think it's weird?" Tony made a few sweet words, and finally eased the tense atmosphere in the car. Everyone was amused by his humorous words. "Okay, relax dear." The soldier in the front co-pilot turned around and looked at Tony and raised his hand. "Sir, I have a question for you. I heard that the cover girls of Maxim magazine for 12 months last year all slept with you?" Tony took off his sunglasses and looked at him. "This is a good question. Yes and no, because the March schedule conflicts with mine. Fortunately the December ones are twin sisters. Any more questions?" Hearing this, everyone, including the female pilot, smiled. Hearing this, the soldier next to him raised his hand, and Tony complained, "Why are you raising your hand for no reason? Is it an honor to take a photo with you?" The soldier looked at Tony and asked, "Yes, it's not easy." The soldier immediately unbuckled his seatbelt and handed the camera to the co-pilot, then made a yeah gesture and leaned against Tony. "I don't want to see the photo on your personal website. Don't put it online." He immediately put his hand down. "I was just joking with him." Tony glanced at him, and he immediately raised his hand happily again. "Yeah. Peace. I love peace. Peace will make me lose my job." Tony looked at the camera and talked to himself. Just as the co-pilot was about to press the shutter, the military Hummer in front suddenly exploded. Chapter 198. Oh, damn. I can still remember the soldier's smile. Tony looked at the situation from a third-person perspective again and couldn't help but lower his head. "Is this the first picture of you when the accident happened?" Rod glanced at Tony. God knows how long he looked for Tony in the desert after the incident happened. In the end, he didn't find him. It was only after Tony escaped that he found him. "Yeah." Tony nodded and suddenly thought of Ethan, his good friend. If there was no Ethan, there would be no Iron Man. He would never have survived to escape from the cave. Pepper squinted at the way Tony said that. Fortunately, Tony was not in front of her at this time, otherwise she would definitely let Tony know what the Wrath of Thunder was. Will peace make him lose his job? George frowned slightly and then thought of what Cheyenne Moose said before, that he was the world's largest arms trader. George immediately guessed what the purpose of Tony's trip was. Garfield Spider was more concerned about the fact that Tony had slept with so many cover girls. He couldn't help but look at Harry beside him, and Harry couldn't help coughing. He had done this kind of thing before, but not as outrageous as Tony. He had slept with 12 girls, including twin sisters. He was really playing too much. Gwen noticed that Garfield Spider was looking at Harry and remembered that Harry seemed to have told Garfield Spider about this matter in the sky, so she couldn't help but look at him. Garfield Spider noticed her sight and quickly turned his head back to play with the spoon in his hand. As the explosion occurred, Tony panicked and said, "What's wrong?" "There's something on the left," the female pilot shouted, and was shot to the ground as soon as she left the car with a gun. The co-pilot told Jimmy to protect Tony and then got out of the car with a gun. As fierce gunfire came, the co-pilot was shot dead. Jimmy got out of the car and prepared to fight. It was too late for Tony to stop him. Jimmy was shot into a hornet's nest by the enemy's bullets as soon as he got out of the car. The door was covered with bullet holes. Tony looked around in panic in the car. All the soldiers who were protecting him were killed. Tony left the military Hummer in a panic and hid behind a big rock under the gunfire. He just took out his mobile phone to call for help when he saw a missile landed on the open space beside him. The missile was written with Stark Industries. Tony listened to the increasingly harsh sound and immediately stood up and wanted to escape, but it was too late. He was blown away immediately. He lay on the ground with his back to the sky and looked at the sky weakly with intense tinnitus in his ears. There were small holes all over the shirt, and the blood soaked the white shirt into red. Tony quickly ripped open his shirt, revealing the bulletproof vest inside, only to see that the bulletproof vest had been penetrated and shrapnel was embedded in his body. In a trance, Tony heard a name and saw the bag on Tony's head was opened. He was surrounded by a group of gangsters with scars all over his body. He saw one of them holding a camera and recording a video of himself. Abadi asked Annie, "This is Gu Miller. We want to tell you. You didn't tell us that the target of assassination was Tony Stark." Abadi asked Annie, "You must pay the price for lies and deception. The price of assassinating Tony Stark has increased." The gangsters were all masked, and one of them was reading a manuscript. "Wow. Is it so dangerous?" Even the bulletproof vest was penetrated, and it was a missile from his own industry that blew it through. Toby Spider looked at it in surprise. The missile that fell in front of Tony clearly had Stark Industries written on it. This is already telling. His own weapon was used to attack himself. And that Abadiat stain. It's obvious that he was the one who betrayed Tony Stark. Tony covered his head and didn't speak. At that time, He was fuzzy and couldn't remember what the gangsters did or said, and he almost died in a badass hands. Time goes back to 36 hours ago. Rhodes stood on the podium and was playing a video. Inventor, genius, patriot. Even at a very young age, Howard Stark's son, the descendant of this legendary weapons developer. He was so smart that he stole the show. He designed his first circuit board at the age of 4 and a V8 engine at the age of 6. At the age of 17, he graduated from MIT with the highest honors. Later, his great father unfortunately passed away. Howard Stark's lifelong ally, Obadiah Stane, stepped up to fill the gap left by the legendary founder. Until then, a 21-year-old prodigal son who returned to the right path after straying. He took on the heavy responsibility of CEO of Stark Industries. After taking the leadership of the company, Tony brought his father's kingdom into a new era. He developed intelligent weapons, advanced robots and satellite targeting systems. Today, Tony Stark has given the weapons industry a new look. Strongly maintained freedom and stability. Ensured national security and interests on a global scale. Obadiah. When Tony saw Obadiah Stane again on the sky, a trace of disgust flashed in his eyes. Even though the old man had been dead for a long time, he still didn't want to see his face. It seems that you still have a deep grudge against him. Tony. Egghead smiled at him lightly. Yeah. If you were almost killed, would you remember him for the rest of your life? Tony rolled his eyes and choked back. The video ended, and Rhodes stood on the stage and said, as the liaison officer between the military and Stark Company, I'm very honored to work with a true patriot. He is my friend. And also my best teacher. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to present this year's top award to the respected Tony Stark. Everyone in the audience applauded, but Tony was nowhere to be seen. Rhodes shouted again a little embarrassedly, Tony. Obadiah shook his head and walked up to take the trophy from Rhodes. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. Thank you for coming to the rescue. Rhodes whispered a thank you to him. Obadiah looked at the trophy in his hand and praised, it's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you everyone. Unfortunately, I'm not Tony Stark. His words caused laughter from everyone in the audience, but if I were Tony, I would tell everyone how touched I am. How happy I'm to receive this supreme award. Speaking of Tony, his greatest strength is also his greatest weakness. He only knows how to work. Chapter 199. Rod, how come I didn't know I was your teacher? Tony looked at Rod with a strange look. Hey, come on. That's just a speech. You don't really believe it, do you? Rod looked at him and spread his hands. He would not be willing to be used as a joke by Tony. Oh, it really makes me sad. I thought I could have more students, although I won't accept you. Tony said funny. Captain America was not familiar with them, and he was not used to Tony's way of speaking, because he had not learned modern knowledge well. So he looked at him inexplicably. Obadiah just said that Tony was addicted to work and didn't come to the award ceremony, but Tony appeared in a casino and was happily gambling. Behind him stood Happy, the driver and security guard, and two beauties beside him. When Tony was flirting with her, Rod appeared next to him. He said to Tony in a bad tone, you are amazing. No one does things like you. You are amazing. Seeing Rod's bad look, Tony immediately said from the bottom of his heart, I'm so sorry. They told me that you would feel very honored if I came to present the award. Rod said to Tony with a fake smile, of course I'm very honored. Because it's you. When will it be presented? Tony asked in a serious tone. Right now. Please accept it. Rod raised his hand holding the trophy and placed it in front of Tony. This is too easy. I'm so sorry. Then he sincerely apologized to Rod again. Forget it. It doesn't matter. Rod also knew that Tony didn't like that kind of occasion, but he was a little angry that he almost made him lose face. Then Tony casually handed the trophy to the beauty beside him. Okay, let me open your eyes. It's really extraordinary. We've never seen it before. Then he asked her to help him blow the dice, and then asked Rhodes to help. How could Rhodes agree? He slapped his hand away. Tony threw the two dice and shouted, okay. Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes rolled the dice. Look. The result was only 2 pitiful points. Rhodes shrugged. It's terrible. Tony said indifferently, victory and defeat are common in the military. Even if you helped, Then the two left the casino. Before leaving, Tony stuffed the trophy into a staff member inside. It seems that he doesn't care about this top award at all. The first generation Uncle Ben said as he watched Tony give the trophy away casually. Yeah. Toby Spider nodded. Is this a billionaire? He never thought that such a person existed, who disdained the supreme honor in the eyes of others. You can't learn from him, Peter. You must not forget your roots, Aunt May said solemnly, holding Toby Spider's hand. I understand, Aunt May. Toby Spider looked at her and said, of course he knew what made him successful. Was it superpowers? No. It was his warm heart. This is the real reason why he is loved by countless people. Tony walked towards his luxury car surrounded by bodyguards. As soon as Happy opened the car door for him, a lady called him, Mr. Stark. Forgive me, Mr. Stark. Christine Everhart. From Vanity Fair. Can I ask you a few questions? She looked at Tony and asked. Happy whispered to Tony what to do. Let her ask. Hi. Yeah. You can. Ask. Tony turned around and looked at the little beauty. You have been called the modern Da Vinci. What do you think about this? She raised the recorder and asked the first question. It's weird. I can't draw. Tony replied indifferently. What do you think of the other nickname? The Messenger of Death. This is reliable. Tony nodded and asked back, did you graduate from the University of California? It's Brown University. Christine Everhart corrected. Okay, Miss Brown. The world is not perfect, but we have no choice. When one day we no longer need to use weapons to defend peace, I will start to produce building materials for the construction of children's hospitals. She immediately saw that Tony was reciting lines, and Tony smiled and said, practice in front of the mirror every day before going to bed. I can see it. I invite you to watch it on site. Tony immediately invited her. Christine Everhart did not refuse directly, but said, as long as you answer my questions seriously, of course. My dad believes in a philosophy of life. Only if you have a thicker stick than others, you will have peace. Tony folded his arms and looked at her. What a wise saying. The stick seller is different. She mocked Howard. Although Tony didn't like his father very much, he would not let anyone insult him casually, so he fought back. My dad helped defeat the Nazis. He has made many contributions. Many people, including professors in your university, call him a hero. But there are also many people who call him a warmonger. Christine Everhart still didn't mean to stop, so Tony took off his glasses and looked at her and asked, tell me, would you like to report that we have saved tens of billions of dollars by improving medical technology or relying on smart crops to prevent famine? These advances are inseparable from military funds. Honey. Tony's eyes were very serious and solemn. Wow. Have you never had trouble sleeping? Christine Everhart asked curiously. It depends on who you are with, Tony said lightly. The next second, the two of them were already rolling on the sheets. Christine Everhart looked very wild and kept pressing on Tony. Tony wanted to gain the upper hand, but the two of them fell under the bed together. Wow. Really fast. Huh. Were you like this at that time, Harry? Garfield Spider sighed. She was still mocking Tony Stark, and then she went to bed with him. The second generation Harry was stunned by Garfield Spider's question and replied, no. Although there have been times, but not so fast. Garfield Spider looked at him half doubtfully. Really? Yeah. Really? Harry nodded helplessly. Oh. Tony's romantic history. Ha 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 ha. Rod looked at Tony and laughed. Everyone on the side couldn't help laughing. Although it was well known that Tony was very romantic and a real playboy, it was the first time to feel it so directly. Tony spread his hands and said, don't envy me. Not everyone has the opportunity to be favored by a beauty. But what he didn't know was that Pepper was squinting at this scene. If the pen in her hand was not made of steel, it would have been broken. Christine Everhart looked a little ugly. This scene would have a great negative impact on her if it was exposed. She wanted to climb up the ladder at the beginning, but Tony didn't like her. Now she lost more than she gained. Her reputation is ruined. Tony also thought of this, but he couldn't do anything. Some things are done and there is no regret medicine. Chapter 200. Kristen Everhart lay on the bed, and the next second Jarvis' voice woke her up. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. As Jarvis' voice broadcast, the glass beside the room became transparent, and you can see the blue ocean outside the window directly. This is Tony's Malibu villa in California. She came to the living room, but didn't hear Tony's voice, so she called twice, and no one responded, so she wandered around the villa curiously. Seeing a smart lock on the wall, she wanted to turn the switch, but Jarvis's warning scared her. You don't have the right to enter this area, miss. That's Jarvis, the electronic butler here. Pepper appeared behind her at some point and explained to her, holding some clothes in her hands. Pepper returned her clothes to her and told her that there was a car waiting for her outside and she could go wherever she wanted. Kristen Everhart looked at Pepper and walked up to her and said, "You must be the famous Pepper Potts." "You guessed right." Pepper nodded. "After so many years, Tony still asks you to do these chores for him." Christine Everhart provoked Pepper. "Whatever Mr. Stark needs me to do, I'm happy to serve. This also includes dealing with leftovers. Anything else?" Hearing her provocation, Pepper immediately blinked and smiled, and sarcastically said that she was just Tony's leftovers, worthy of the name of Pepper Potts. A war between two women? No gunpowder, but just as deadly. Uncle Ben II took a sip of tea and said with a smile, "Yeah. And it looks like this is not the first time it's happened." George nodded in agreement and said, "Why didn't I realize she was so good at sowing discord?" Tony frowned. Fortunately, Pepper fought back directly at that time, otherwise he would be angry at him when he returned. "Then you're on your own." Rod shrugged. "Angry women are the most terrible. Don't make women angry." Natasha also added lightly. Tony covered his face and began to think about how to please Pepper when he returned. Intense music sounded, and Tony was seen disassembling the engine. Pepper came down from upstairs. Tony ordered Jarvis, "Show me the decomposition diagram." Jarvis quickly analyzed the problem of the engine. "There is a problem with the third cylinder, insufficient pressure." While answering the phone, Pepper entered the password to open the door of the underground garage and turn down the music. Hearing the music getting quieter, Tony said without turning his head, "Don't turn down the music." Pepper put down the phone and looked at Tony. "You should be on the other side of the earth now." Before she finished speaking, Tony asked, "What's her attitude?" Pepper spread her hands and said, "Arrogant. Why are you in a hurry to get me out?" Tony picked up a cylinder gasket and checked it. "Because your plane was supposed to take off an hour and a half ago." "That's strange. It's my private plane. The time should be decided by me," Tony said with a puzzled look. Pepper ignored Tony's complaints and said to him, "Tony, I have a few things to tell you before you leave. I said private planes don't wait for their owners. What's the point of having private planes?" Tony complained non-stop. Pepper still ignored him and said to herself, "Larry called and said that Jackson Pollock's painting has a new buyer. Do you want it?" Tony didn't understand the painting and thought it was his Spring masterpiece. Pepper had to explain to him that Springs was a place in East Hampton where he had worked and lived. Tell him that it didn't refer to the season and thought the painting was very representative, but the asking price was a bit outrageous. Hearing that Pepper thought it was representative, Tony immediately decided to buy it, and Pepper also showed a faint smile on her face because she really liked the painting. "Okay. There is also the opening speech of MIT." Pepper glanced at the document and followed Tony. "That was in June. Don't bother me with irrelevant things," Tony said dissatisfiedly as he walked. "I'm annoyed by you too. I promise. Sign this before you get on the plane." Pepper opened one of the documents. "If you're annoyed, solve it yourself. Don't blame me." "What are you doing? Why do you have to chase me away? Do you have plans?" Tony turned around and looked at her and asked, and signed casually, "I really have plans." Pepper glanced at him. "I don't like you having plans." Tony shook his head. "Of course I should have plans for my birthday." Pepper glared at him. "Your birthday?" Tony was surprised to hear this. He had forgotten when Pepper's birthday was. Although he did forget, he didn't know how to show it too obviously, so he quickly made up for it. "I know. It's here now." "Of course. Is there anything strange about this?" "It was on this day last year." Pepper looked at Tony with a fake smile. "Buy me a beautiful gift." "I've already bought it. It's very beautiful and tasteful." "Thank you, Mr. Stark." Pepper had long guessed that Tony would not remember her birthday, so she was not angry. "You're welcome, Miss Potts." Pepper tapped the cup in his hand, reminding him that it was getting cold, so Tony drank it all and handed the empty cup to her. "Peter, do you remember my birthday?" Seeing this, the second generation Gwen suddenly turned around and asked Parker. "Oh." Garfield Spider died countless brain cells in an instant and couldn't remember when Gwen's birthday was. "Well, it seems that I haven't told you when my birthday is." Looking at Garfield Spider's hesitation, Gwen stopped Helen's little hand from secretly reminding him and took the initiative to help him out. "I'm sorry, Gwen. I will definitely remember it." Garfield Spider held Gwen's hand affectionately and looked at her and said. Harry covered his face on the side. He was a little too full of dog food. He couldn't help but say, "Hey, don't do this. There is a single person here." "Oh, I'm sorry, Harry." Garfield Spider and Gwen turned around and said to Harry apologetically, "So that's why you were 3 hours late at that time. You told me it was a natural disaster. Your car broke down." Rod stood up and shouted at Tony. "Ahaha, yeah. There's nothing we can do about it, you know." Tony laughed a little awkwardly, trying to make a joke to fool Rod. Rod rolled his eyes and sat down angrily. "Oh. Don't be like this, man. I'll buy you a drink when we get back." "Hey, only Rod. What should we do?" Barton looked at Tony. "Let's go together. Let's have a party." Tony waved his hand and said without hesitation. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.